Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. This is Lori and the panel's all here. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Flat Earth. I have a monologue intro that I would like to read at the beginning of the show. So please bear with me because it's too long for me to have memorized, so I have to read it. Here we go. There's going to be a lot of information given in the next 3 hours. Don't worry about whether we are right or wrong while you watch and listen. Just keep your mind as open as possible during the show. If you hear or see something that creates an emotional response or a feeling of disbelief, try to, as quickly as you can, to not allow it to make you become emotional or agitated so you can get your head back in the game, as they say. The purpose of this presentation is to show evidence and make you the jury. We were supposed to open the chat for this episode tonight, but tech difficulties prevents that, so keep a notebook handy for your questions that you want to further research and for doodling on while you listen. Our apologies. You and your Flat Earth peers should be in a place by now that you cannot be led around by the nose. You should not be susceptible to propaganda or brainwashing techniques. Remember, you are an awakened individual, one who arrived in the Flat Earth movement through an open mind and hours of research. You are aware that there are people and agencies who are working every day to control the reality we see in the world. These are governments and agencies with their propaganda and their news agents who tell you what you are supposed to think. This comes after an indoctrination program we all went through called education. Your entire education was a program written by the RAND Corporation. RAND stands for R and D and is research and development. That's what it means. There was a plan in place for many decades, longer than most of us have been alive, to bring about a one-world organization, a new world order, and in order for that to happen and be successful, we all have to agree to it. No dissidents will be allowed. So the information we are going to share with you will be enough for it to at least stop and make you think. So don't get stuck on any one thing, because if you do, you will negate everything you hear after that. You will be able to replay this and verify for yourselves everything we say. We have been compiling this information for many months. The only way to connect the dots is to have enough dots to connect together to form an image. You also have to know the order of the dots, where are numbers 1, 2, 3 in order to make an image appear, to make an image out of it. For many months, there have just been a bunch of random thoughts or dots with no order that has emerged to show you what we are about to show you. Just a series of dramas and disinformation, or what seemed like people making waves, or leader types attempting to claim ownership of the Flat Earth movement. This has simply been an attempt, a very strong one, to distract and cover up, and we are certain there has been information inserted to create division, and so far it has worked fairly well, much to the degree that has been used countless times before in every organic grassroots political or social movement in history. For the next several hours, we will present a case for you to consider. We are not the judges, you are. Consider this the presentation of the case by the prosecution, for lack of a better comparison. What we hope to accomplish here is to reopen the minds of those who have approved of Flat Earth as their true worldview, but have also been infiltrated by those who came before and inserted repeated information that is not proven and most likely not true. So on with the presentation of the Flat Earth Watergate. If we are incorrect, and in any way or all of our assumptions, we will certainly be informed in the coming hours and days. If there is some evidence to show us to be in error, then please present it in comments, which will open after the live broadcast is over. Thanks for watching, and thanks to those who continue every day to research and question the theories and proofs of the stationary flat plane of this Earth. Some of these people will be spoken about in this show and may be considered some of what we are going to call the distractors. Mark Sargent, Eric Dubay, Math Powerland, Patricia Steer, Sasha Cullen, Rob Skiba, Tiger Dan, Gypsy Girl, Santos Bonacci, Jesse Spots, Kent Hovind, Max Egan, Star Gods, Stars Our Souls, Tila Tequila, David Weiss, Tim Osman, and his 50 troll accounts. Anyone who was a bona fide flat earther and instead went back into the matrix may also be up for grabs. So on with the show. And thanks for listening for me reading.
We're back
All right,
online.
welcome everybody, and how is everyone?
Hello, hello.
Great, thanks. How are you?
Awesome, I'm awesome. Lawrence, how are you?
Yeah, this has been the biggest week in Flat Earth. There's been so much stuff happening. It's going to be a very exciting show, and you're going to get some new information that you've never seen before, or most of you never seen before. And you know, there is going to be a huge amount of fallout from this show because we're going to tell the truth and we're not going to spare anybody. It will probably run into next week's show because there's so much material to cover. Some of this stuff has been hastily put together because we've had a lot to do, and it's further complicated by the fact that as part of my research for this show, I think I've come across what is the correct shape of the Earth, and it does appear to fit, and we'll be covering that at some stage. Also, I'll be also covering the shadows in Antarctica. I've got some screen shares for you where you can actually see that there are shadows cast east, north, west, and south. So we've got a lot to show you, and welcome to the show. It's going to be a rough ride, but I hope you enjoy it.
Kristen, you want to have a minute for an intro?
Well, sure. We're enjoying a nice full moon time, everybody. We're all in that together, along with this journey into truth, the search for truth, and we're expressing concerns and questions today more than anything. And I just want to remind the audience of that. Myself, I can speak for myself in this, and I know. I believe the three of you feel roughly similar. I know myself, I've reserved making any judgment about the actions of others the entire time. I have still yet to make up my mind about any one individual. I have never called anybody out as this or that to date. I don't have any plans to do that. I certainly would not ever at any point agree to that unless we all had conclusive evidence. Okay, so just to be clear, why I believe we're here and why I know I'm here. And I just hope everybody can bear with us while we go through this, because this isn't what any of us planned on doing when we got involved with this journey for the truth. None of us could have known exactly how this would play out or how it might be co-opted. And as Lori pointed out in the introduction, that is what has happened historically to these organic movements. There's no question in my mind this has been organic in many ways, and Lawrence is one of many people who was able to come to this in his own way without having to be told it. However, the self-appointed leaders, whether they say those words or not, of this movement have all had to be told. They didn't come to it on their own. And so they're like the rest of us. They're like most of us. And they all chose, or we would hopefully be safe to assume that they chose to do this of their own free will, to undertake this mission and to be responsible to an audience of thousands, and who knows how confident they were that they could amass such an audience, but that's what they've been able to do. And so my questions today revolve around how is it that they've been able to make the impact they've had in a somewhat divisive and negative fashion. If that was not their intention, how have they been able to be so effective at that? So there it is. I'm going to leave it there and hope that that's helpful to some people listening. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm going to add to that real quick. Kristen, you're feeding back.
Okay, I'm not speaking. I don't know what's happening.
Just mute your mic, or maybe it's okay now.
Okay.
Let me add to that I have watched over my lifetime people rise and fall in popularity as far as being showbiz people or music stars or political leaders. And one of the things that I have recognized after the fact over the years is that people don't rise to the top without help. They just don't. There's no such thing as somebody just going viral without the help of others or without the help of something pushing them behind the scenes. And I mean, I even can say that about the Beatles or Elvis or Michael Jackson or Martin Luther King Jr. or anybody who became an international or a national star. And so the same thing applies in the Flat Earth movement, that there's only two ways to get to the top, and that is because people push you there, real people push you there, and create the leader from the organic people movement, or someone's in there helping you, promoting you, getting you risen to the top, so to speak. So what you just said applies to not only to the people who are sort of the leaders of Flat Earth, and whether or not they consider themselves leaders or whether it was their intention to be a leader, people have made them leaders, whether it's the organic people or whether it's somebody behind the scenes creating. And I'm just going to throw it out there for the very beginning to get this thing rolling, because it is my opinion and it is my viewpoint after 9 months of being involved in Flat Earth, in the movement and in the community, and someone who has really worked hard at becoming known, because that's my personality, that's the type of person that I am. They're from the very beginning of this whole thing. There were people in 9/11 movements and other conspiracy theory movements, in the alternative truth movement, who started screaming right off the bat that this Flat Earth was a government psyop. And all of us were like, no, 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 that's not what it is. This is really true. This is really organic. The world is really flat. Then, as time went by, I've discovered there truly is a psyop, but it is not the Flat Earthers. It is those who want to implode, prevent, destroy the Flat Earth movement from inside. So that being said, the evidence will start to mount up, and what I talked about in my intro about connecting the dots, if you just have a whole bunch of dots on a piece of paper, you can make any picture out of them you want, until those dots are numbered, until they actually, you start to draw the lines between them and make a picture out of it. It could be anything. But as time's gone by, we've begun to connect the dots, and the dots say that there is an orchestrated government psyop that was created to belittle, obfuscate, destroy, make fun of, create what looks like a cult, create what looks like a fake movement. And we're about to tell you through this presentation tonight how they've done it, and who we suspect is a part of it. So, having said that, you guys go take it. And by the way, I have to say right off the bat that Jonathan is flying by the seat of his pants on this. He does not know that this is what this show was about. He does not know that the rest of us talked about it beforehand. We didn't purposefully keep him out of the loop. We wanted to be able to do this without having any of his input, because we don't want anybody to think that Jonathan is any part of this, and he is free to say whatever he wants comment-wise, And if nothing else, if he disagrees with any of the evidence that we have, we sure hope that he will jump in there and say he disagrees and why. So
Yeah, I was a little concerned because I went out and bought a webcam so I could be back with the group in that regard, and the link you sent me didn't work, and so I thought you guys didn't want me on. So I mean, you guys do want me here, right?
Well, of course we want you here.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
if at any point, we thought you wouldn't be able to be here because you were going to overlap with the Globebuster show.
No, I scheduled it around it so the Globebusters is 3 to 6, and I do this from 6 to 9, so it works. You know, I was trying to get in for like about 15 minutes, but I couldn't get in. So, but I made it.
Okay, good. All right. So
glad you're here, John. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Kristen. Good to see you. Lawrence. Hey, everybody.
Thanks. Good to see you
Do you
too.
want to kick off then, Laurie? Do you want to kick off with? Did you get that clip about the new intro to Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes? Because you was going to bring that up.
Okay, so that's not where I was expecting to start, but
Okay.
let me
to kick off with
let me
something?
go look for that. Let me go look for that. And probably one of the reasons why you bring that up is because we talked about it earlier, that it appears that there's sort of a direction with Patricia Steer's show and with some other people to sort of by their actions and by their directions that they're taking to sort of make Flat Earth look like entertainment. And it's most certainly is not. Those of us who have been involved in it from practically the beginning of this resurgence of it consider it a very serious topic and not one to be made light of. So go ahead, Lawrence, and talk about something else, and let me find that.
Okay. Well, one of the big things this week, which has been a bone of contention, ever since over the past 12 months, has been the long-haul flights in the Southern Hemisphere. And Max Egan has done the trip, and he's fully documented it. I've got some screen shares here if we have time to show them. He's got his ticket stub. He's got the gate with the details on, and there's another sign up in the airport saying something like enjoy your trip to Santiago. You've got him on the plane where you can actually see the flight in progress. And there's no reason to believe that Max Egan has actually fabricated all that. A lot of people will be saying that. But the big impact of that is to destroy the last of any semblance of credibility that Mark Sargent has with his clues, because that was the only one he's had. None of his other clues stand up to scrutiny. They're all speculation at best. So Mark Sargent, he's got no clues left. Because once you've took down the long haul, you've destroyed his map maker's clue, and you've also destroyed his magic show. And the other thing about Mark Sargent is he stops in the Northern Hemisphere. I've been doing some research, and 4,000-mile flights, some of them are two stops. So you try and get a flight from, say, Anchorage to Moscow, capital of Russia, and you're looking at 2 stops. Los Angeles to places over there is 2 stops. Some of them are 3 stops. There's no end of flight journeys that are not one stop or non-stop. It's very similar. A lot of it's down to populations. If they can't fill the flight up, then these aircraft are going to take diversions and pick up people on the way so that it makes the flight financially viable. That's all there is to it. And the Santiago, Chile flight has been proven to be correct. I believe John LeBon has actually taken the Sydney to Johannesburg flight, which is a similar distance of about 7,000 miles. So that's it. The flights are real.
the whole thing was a red herring argument because, see, it was Mark Sargent that inserted that whole thing, the Southern Hemisphere flights going off of radar and how it would be impossible to fly from, Santiago to South America in this amount of time, da 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 da. But the thing is it's a red herring because, again, we went over this a couple weeks ago, but even given the distances by like Captain James Cook, it's only about 8,000 miles from the southern tip of South America over to New Zealand. Actually, it's like 7,000 to New Zealand and maybe 8,000 to Australia. And so flying from those 2 points is totally doable on a flat Earth, even given the distances that Robotham was using to sort of describe his model. Now, I can also see that, on any Mercator projection, the Peters projection, Antarctica is huge. And so I could totally see that flight even passing over ice at some points without having to go all the way to the edge of the map. So the whole thing's a red herring argument, and all it proves is that we don't have very accurate maps, and it proves that Mark Sargent was wrong. But it doesn't prove we live on a spinning globe.
Well, it also leads to the panel show that we watched, all of us. I'm sure. I don't know if you did, John, but the rest of us did. That Patricia Steer had on the other night with I think it was called Flat Earth: The Future or whatever. And we watched while a question came in. So, do you guys all want to talk about the maps? And the question came in, so what about Max Egan and his thing and his flight? And Mark Sargent, when he was asked, do you have a comment on this? He said no comment.
He said he hadn't seen it. He said he hadn't seen it, which by his body language he had.
Well, regardless of whether he'd seen it or not, to just say no comment over something that is the basis of one of his entire clues seems evasive, and people should be concerned that he would evade that question. We all get asked tough questions, and every once in a while we have to back up and say, well, I might have been wrong about that. And we've done it on this show several times, and I'm sure we'll continue to. But just for a moment, since you brought that up, and now everybody's like, oh, now they're going to beat up on Patricia Steer, I want to do a screen share here. And
to jump in real quick, it did not make sense that he would not have commented. It wasn't necessary that he'd seen it or not. They could have had a qualified discussion about the details of the video right there, because it's very simple for them to explain what the video covered, and he still needed to respond. I mean, whether he saw it or not, and it just wasn't quite believable when he said, which one? And, oh, no, I haven't seen that. There was another point in the show where, he was out of touch on something very, one of the latest things too, and said, well, that's just come out, which is, the tunnels in Antarctica article that had come out days ago, and he claimed to have just gotten it 4 hours earlier. So he tried to pass it off as sort of like, who knows anything about it yet, because he didn't know anything about it. And I'm not saying he was sitting there lying, no, but I'm just saying it didn't make sense to not have. He really owes everybody a response about this Antarctica, or these long haul flights, from South America to Australia.
This is important to, try to create an order, some kind of order out of, because we have a lot of information. And so
yes.
The one bit of information that I think is critical is to make sure that the people who are top of the heap and well known in flat Earth have their feet held to the fire. Now, I know Patricia's been attacked on many, many occasions, and they've been personal attacks and things like that. This is in no way intended to be a personal attack. We are specifically watching and paying attention to and commenting on people's actions and intentions. So if your intention is to make the Flat Earth movement seem like an entertainment a show where you can either capitalize on it or you can grow your viewership or whatever, then let me make sure to, you know, express to you that that's not what this is about. This is Patricia's new intro for her show.
Another hot potato. Another hot potato. Conspiracies, veganism, oh yeah. What do my Patricia see? What do you, my Patricia see? And now, coming to you live from the Flat Earth and Other Hot Potato Studio, your host, Patricia Steer.
Okay, well, so also you want to maybe take a look at this. So I don't mean to imply that this is a Josie and the Pussycats thing, but I immediately, when I heard her intro, that took me back to Josie and the Pussycats, and I remember, you know, the Scooby-Doo crew and all that. And if that's your intention, Patricia, to have your show, now I fully understand that your show is not just about Flat Earth, and that you have also gone on record as saying, you know, if Flat Earth, Kristen, you have that quote better than I do. What did she say? Kristen, you have your mic muted.
Yes. In this, you're talking about her comment in the panel discussion?
Oh, yes.
I believe it was roughly that if Earth is proven to be a sphere, and I'm not sure I have that first part right, but she said basically she would say she's sorry and move on to other things, move on to other topics, and maybe she would still do a show or maybe not. But you know, I'm not saying anything was wrong with her saying that, but and not to derail where you're going with that, but that's roughly what she commented. It just seems interesting. There was not nobody really talked about how revelatory this has been for them in that show. So it was a little interesting, sort of the kind of laissez-faire feeling that I got from the panel in general about how much this means to them, and not just, it's certainly not about beliefs, it's about what they know to be true after all the research they've done, I would hope, and I didn't feel that come across.
Well, what's important here is, you know, this all comes on the heels of a huge flip-flop by Tiger Dan. And we all know about it. We've all talked about it in the community this week. Morgile made a video about it, a real intense video about it, a long one. And none of us had any input on John's video. That was his own making. There was also, let's see if I have this clip while you guys are talking, but there was also a, no, that's not the one. There was also a, you know, I guess it was David Weiss that also did a show or a clip or something about it. Well, let's see where that is, because I have it here somewhere. Tiger Dan, let's see, not a call. No, that's not it. Tiger Dan, Runaway.
Yeah, you know,
Here we go. Here we go. Let me play this. Hold on just a second, and let me get this up.
Sweetly.
Okay. I have to come back and do a screen share.
I'm not stopping. I'm going to keep going as long as I can go with it. I'm not changing tactics and switching. But when you see me switching, when you see me coming on the YouTube saying, I don't believe the flat earth anymore, then you can assume that I've been tortured and start viewpoint. I don't believe the flat earth anymore, then you can assume that I've been tortured and start viewpoint. I don't believe the flat earth anymore, then you can assume that I've been tortured and start viewpoint. So, yeah, I'm going to be continuing with the flat earth videos I made.
Okay, so there you go. You know, this is a situation where somebody seriously left flat earth, and not only did they leave flat earth, they left a pile of burning rubble behind him.
After exposing himself.
and on top of that, you know, he started to do anti-proofs of flat earth. But one of the things that I want to talk about with regards to this concept of a psyop is I believe that there has been a psyop that was created before flat earth ever started on this round of trending, okay? And because Tiger Dan was involved in flat earth well before last February, which is supposed to be the sort of kickoff date or month for the mass awakening of began for flat earth. And he was already making videos about flat earth, and as a Christian, and based in the Bible and based in biblical in scripture and so on. So when somebody like him goes on Patricia's show a little while back and makes a statement like that, that's a pretty powerful statement. It's one I've never made, and wouldn't have even have dreamed of making it, because I personally don't believe in that whole kind of, you know, fear porn thing of you know, I know people get taken out. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, how important is Tiger Dan actually in the bigger picture of things? And what magnitude does he represent as far as being a major figure in flat earth? Yeah, he had 25,000, you know, subscribers. But let's just analyze for a moment the fact that somebody like Tiger Dan goes on Patricia's show, makes a statement like that, then David Weiss happens to be the one to pull it out and play it, and they all talked about him ad nauseum for the first half hour of the show that they did, the future show. They talked about him. They said they were going to pray for him. They said he, you know, some of them said he may have been taken over by a demon, all kinds of stuff. So there is a reason why we're doing this show and why we're putting these dots out on a piece of paper for you all to look at and to come back and rewatch later.
I was gonna say I've got a big piece of the puzzle that I don't think you guys are even aware of. But last night, like in the wee hours of the morning, I just so happened to see Cognitive Dissonance had put out a basically a challenge to me to here's what he was saying was it was a response to my Tiger Dan is a lying shill video. But he challenged me to a debate, and I just so happened to notice that notification as soon as he sent it. And so I was like, I'll debate you anytime. And it took a few hours, and they wanted to like get my Google Plus account information for some reason. I'm like, just send me the link. So finally, after hours and hours, I got on this debate. It was 3 against 1. It was Cognitive Dissonance, that Adam Moyer guy, and Upside Down Head Ted. And basically what they were saying is for a whole hour and a half, they wouldn't let me finish a sentence. I was trying to prove the flat earth, and every time I'd make a point, they'd just start screaming obscenities. But what they were saying is that I made this video about Tiger Dan, who is this nice Christian man. And if you notice during Tiger Dan's previous series, he was talking about Tim Osmond and recommending people to go to his channel. So, you know, I'm under the impression that Tiger Dan was probably Flat Earth Society long before he started doing videos, and then he started, doing some proofs and some biblical stuff to get people on board. And now he's going with the camp of Tim Osmond, Mike, Adam Moyer, and Upside Down Head Ted. And the reason they said that they wouldn't debate me again is because they didn't have Red's rhetoric. So they wanted to have it 4-on-1, and Red's rhetoric's a 14-year-old kid, 15-year-old kid. And so it just goes to show what cowards these people are, and they wouldn't let me even finish a single sentence.
Well, that's because they are the Psyop. They are being used for this Psyop, not us. They are the ones who have been co-opted by these organizations, and sadly, I'm going to do another screen share again. This is called the Gentleman's Guide to Forum Spies. And let me make this present to everyone so it's a little bigger. This starts out being real easy, but then it starts to get really hard to share all these screens. Okay, so the Gentleperson's Guide to Forum Spies is just one version of, these are the spooks, feds, etc., disinformation agents, counterintelligence agents, misinformation agents. They talk about COINTELPRO and consensus cracking and forum sliding and topic dilution and information collection, anger trolling, gaining full control. And in conclusion, they have 25 rules of disinformation. I invite you to go and find this link. It's called the Gentleman's Guide. Let's see, it's cryptomy.org 2012, and then in this Gentleman's Forum Spies, you'll be able to find it. And right here is just the little man's version of how to become a counterintelligence agent. And don't think for a second that there aren't top dog people with PhDs in 5 different things, master's degrees in this and psychology and all kinds of stuff, who are employed. And I can argue with John LeBon, for example, until the cows come home, that there are no such thing as paid shills, because there wouldn't be guides. There wouldn't be organizations like the CIA and the FBI and the Mossad, and every country has one, ESA, or whatever the new KGB one's called. Every single country has spies. Every single country has organizations. There is a reason to keep Flat Earth from becoming real. There is a reason to create a PSYOP before the whole thing even hits the pavement, so that they can implant people into your grassroots organization and your movement and your community as your friends and your people on forums and groups that you're right there with, that you have no clue whatsoever are real people or real agents. Tim Osmond is well on record as stating he has 50 YouTube accounts. That is probably a drop in the bucket to what he actually has. There are applications and programs that you can open up, and you can log in as 50 different people simultaneously and just go and bomb the crap out of YouTube chats and forum chats and everything else. So without going off on too much of a rant about that, for anyone out there listening who was rolling their eyes that you guys you've gone off the totally become conspiracy theory fucktards, then you go look for yourself at how much information is out there for counterintelligence agents, disinformation agents, etc., etc. And if you don't believe that some of these people haven't been infiltrated into the flat Earth for the purpose of putting in disinformation, then you're wrong. You're wrong. You're deluded. Go ahead, John. You want to say something?
Yeah, I just got a Skype message from David Weiss. He wanted to know, could he come on and respond?
Not today.
Okay, I didn't think
We
so.
have
But
way too much information to cover. We'll be happy to have David on
one,
after we have concluded our presentation.
okay,
Maybe.
one question or one observation I would have is that it was a good find that Tiger Dan said that on their show, and whether he had that scripted or not, I think David Weiss put that clip out to show that he said that because was Tiger Dan scripted or was he actually saying he's been getting threats? I've never gotten any sort of threats. I mean, maybe I haven't. I just missed them. You know what I mean? But I don't know. He had just asked, so and I'll let him know that maybe he can come on another week. But we got a lot to cover, so that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a whole bunch of people, and we're not going to just talk about the people. I have to reiterate, we're going to talk about their actions and the things that they've done over a long period of time. And we're not here to assassinate anyone. We're not here to corrupt those that are listening. We've in my beginning statement, I said that if you truly are awake, there's nothing we can say that is going to be able to brainwash you or change your mind or anything. If you're not awake, then you need to wake up, because there are people out there who are trying to do those things. They are trying to corrupt your mind. And one of the places we're going to start is with the model and the map, because the model and the map were asked about on Patricia's show with this panel of rock stars of the flat earth the other night, and nobody wanted to touch it. Nobody wanted to go there. And as a matter of fact, the co-intel people are going to use this, because it's already on the table, that they don't even have a map. They don't even have a model. They're just flying by the seat of their pants. They're a bunch of gullible cult members, and that is already being used. And those are the people who created that dialogue, okay? The counterintelligence people. Who gives a crap if we don't have a model or a map yet? We're still working on it. They've had 500 years to fake their model and fake their map. We've only been working on it for 9 months. So if you're not going to be able to cut any slack, and if you're a flat earther who's ready to throw your hands in the air because we don't have a model or a map, then you're not dedicated to the cause. Because if you're not willing to help, and if you're not willing to, look at the proofs that we do have and consider yourself convinced the earth is flat, then you need to just go back into the matrix right now. Just do it right now and save us all a lot of problems of having to listen to you in chat rooms and groups and forums, because you're not a flat earther, and you're not going to be unless you're prepared to do the research. Because if every one of these people who are on these panels and on all these YouTube channels and all these shows were wiped out tomorrow by either whatever happened to Tiger Dan, or that it's a setup that they're all going to start falling like dominoes, one after another, and you're not prepared to go it alone, then and continue your research and continue your beliefs. If you're only doing it because it's trending, then you're not in it. You're not really in it. Just like Adam Moyer, who flip-flopped. He was a flat earther. He said he was. I've been on a private chat with him, and then all of a sudden he's now trying to drag everybody out of the cult. It's a cult, and y'all, I'm here to save you. Here I come to save the day, Mighty Mouse, Adam Moyer. Well, you know what, Adam? You're just like everybody else who's being used. And if you're not prepared to go it alone and have your own belief system, then you're not only not a flat earther, you're not a glober either, because you already gave that up. There was a reason why you believed in the flat earth in the first place. So I'm not going to belabor Adam Moyer because he's being used. So
well, and the funny thing is too is like the stuff that Tiger Dan is debunking is stuff that isn't even proof. He's just making claims like in the video that I responded to, he's got that guy that looks like Santa Claus saying, well, even if we lived on a ball, the horizon would still be flat. But if you raised up an altitude high enough, then the fly on the mile tall ball would see the curve. And it's like, okay, well, what about 20 miles into the air? And so they're not even really debunking anything except for just the superficial, ignorant arguments that we've all sort of already falsified or debunked. So,
okay, well, let's go here. Let's go here. Lawrence has put together some ideas and some information about those same kinds of lies and distractions and disinformation coming from Mark Sargent, and probably more than likely Eric Dubay, because I already have people constantly saying, you know what, I followed Eric Dubay, and then I started researching on my own, and then I found out that what he said about this or what he said about that isn't true. And so that's where we are. We've come to a crossroads. So Lawrence, start talking about some of the information that you've been,
Okay, well,
cross-referencing it with Mark Sargent, for example, like his clues.
okay, well, Tiger Dan, when Tiger Dan decided he was going to put together a revised map, I knew he was doomed to fail because I'd already done the same exercise. And with a circular map, it doesn't matter where you put the continents, you can never get them to match reality in terms of the distance to each other. As soon as you move one that fits, it falls out of sync with something else. However, it wouldn't fit on the Mercator map as well, but we know the Mercator map is skewed because of longitude and latitude. So the further north you get, the more out of proportion they are to reality. And I was just thinking that what tends to happen with all these things that, and I was just looking at random, is that people sometimes hide things in plain sight. So I was looking for the correct map hidden in plain sight because I couldn't find anything on images. And I was looking at Mark Sargent's map makers, believe it or not, and I was going through it. But just going back to Tiger Dan for a second, he mentioned that the Anchorage to London distance was near as damn it was the same as the London to Orlando, which is about 4,300 miles. And when you look at the Mercator map, Anchorage looks getting on for it twice as far. So I envisage in my mind that all these continents at the top, the landmasses at the top, would concertina in and form something like a bit of a diamond shape in terms of how the continents are. And I looked for hours at maps on Mercator. I typed in unskewed Mercator map, and nothing came up. But this particular map that you see in front of you now, if it's on the screen share, is one that Mark Sargent had put up. And I thought, hello, hidden in plain sight. Now, I've sent Laurie the flights superimposed on that. I don't know whether you've got them, but they were on your Facebook page. On the messages. If you've got that one, if you want to flag that one up, I can go through it with you and show how these flights actually fit on this map. This is known as the sinusoid projection. So it's probably a map you've never heard of. It's also known as the Mercator equal area projection. So the land masses are accurate in terms of the relation of the size of one to the other in real life. These are accurate, and when Laurie brings up the flight paths, the routes on this map, drawing straight lines between them, they represent near as damn it accurate in proportion to each other. So if you want to bring them up, I'll go through the flights that are on there.
Lawrence, are you asking me for the one that's on that sinusoidal one, or the one that's on the Mercator?
The one I sent you with the red lines on it. Have you got that? If you haven't, I'll do a screen share myself.
Okay. Is it? I have it. Is it the? Is it?
It's on your Facebook messages.
Yeah,
if you
I
don't
know
want
that.
to get it,
I got it, Lawrence. Okay.
well, you can bring it up, and I'll go through it with people.
All right. Hold on. This screen share thing. I've got so many windows open now. At this point, I'm already like goofballed. This one right here is that the one you're talking about?
No, that's the route for a world cruise.
All right. So that's
it was before that one.
Stop. Okay, let me go back. Okay. Okay. Is it the one with the red dots?
No, the red lines. Most of them are coming out of London.
All right, you didn't send me that, Lawrence.
I did. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll get mine up, shall I? And see if we can
Okay.
we can do a screen share. Let me find it. Just talk a bit while I look for
All
it.
right.
Let's
So,
have a look.
So one of the meltdown things that started to happen was, you know, we don't know if it's a chicken or the egg thing, but weeks ago, months ago, we started talking about the map and the AE map projection not being 100% workable for the observable flights and distances between continents and so on. And so we started to question it. That was, you know, it behooved Lawrence to do that because he can't leave anything alone. So he started digging into it. When he did, some other people started questioning it as well. And one of those people was Tiger Dan. And he wanted to prove that, okay, let me make that. Okay, Lawrence,
does that map come up now?
Okay, now hold on. Talk again and let me make that full the screen if I can do
Does that map come up?
It's come up in your. Can you present to everyone and nobody else talk for a second?
Have I got that on your screens now? The map with the lines.
Yes, I'll stop talking and you talk about it while it's up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So let's imagine that we're going around the clock face, going anti-clockwise. Yeah. All those at the top are emanating out of the UK. So we've got Nuuk, which is about 2,000 miles. Then we've got Anchorage, 4,400 miles. Then we've got Los Angeles, 5,445. We've got Orlando, 4,334. Then going down to Santiago, which is, let me find that one, 7,239 miles. Then we've got Sao Paulo, which is 5,873 miles. Then going down to Africa, we've got Cape Town. Then we've got Johannesburg. Then we're going over to Australia, London to Australia via Abu Dhabi. So you can see that is a direct line path, which makes sense on this map. It's not doglegging anywhere. It's more or less straight. Sometimes the flights to Australia will go a bit more to the east, down to Delhi, and then come down to Australia. And sometimes they go a bit further over to China and then go down to Australia, but it's still going more or less in the correct direction. And then we've got London to Tokyo, and all these distances in terms of proportion and mirroring reality are correct. Now, if you look at the flight from Australia, so if you look at my cursor here, Australia, Sydney to Santiago, it flies off the map. Now, yeah, it flies off the map and it comes back on the other side, gets to Santiago, and that's how they're doing it. If it was going the other way and flying west, it would be too far. So we have, in my view, we have a seamless passage from east to west. Now you're going to say, we can't do that, but you didn't design the world, God did, and it's not for us to decide what God is capable of. Then you've got the flight from Sydney to Johannesburg. All of these things, you can take a screenshot of this yourself, you can get this map, you can upload it. It's called the sinusoid projection or the Mercator equal area map. Go search on Google Images, you'll find this map, and go and start doing some research yourself and plotting the distances. And this is the best representation that I can find of any map. And I actually found this on Mark Sargent's Map Makers. So thank you, Mark Sargent, for bringing to our attention the correct map. You had it hidden in plain sight all the time. The other thing that Mark had on his page, which is quite remarkable, is this. Now I'm going to bring up another thing to share. If you can just bear with me. Do you want to talk for a minute, Laurie, while I bring something else up?
Yeah. So Tiger Dan goes onto a meltdown and starts, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which was extremely suspect as far as most of us were concerned, because it's like, dude, because you can't make the map work, you're going to freak out and just, completely become a flat earther. And then not only that, but you're going to start making proofs against your own proofs, and you're going to start debunking your own proofs. And that's not natural. That's just not normal. And so that is someone, though, does represent someone who possibly has been co-opted. Let's just assume for a second that his whole thing about I've been tortured thing is true. But second of all, it completely does match someone who was put in place as a counterintelligence agent, undercover, so to speak, and pretending to be a real live flat earther, and was in place prior to the kickoff in February of 2015, and then implodes and takes a whole bunch of people with him. And what I mean by a whole bunch of people with him is that a whole bunch of people are using his flip-flop to support their own case that flat Earth is a psyop, and they are the psyop. I mean, if you don't really understand how counterintelligence works, and if you don't know how agent provocateurs are assigned to organic, organizations and movements, then you need to do some research about that, because it's very real, it's very true. I watched it happen, and have watched it happen in the last, 4 or 5 decades. The first one I saw it happen was in the hippie movement that infiltrated the Yippie movement during the anti-war protests of the Vietnam War in the 60s and the early 70s. And then I definitely watched it happen in the Occupy movement, when it started out as what was a grassroots bunch of people, and then was infiltrated by agent provocateurs and dissolved from within. So
yeah, like look at the Franklin riots. It was peaceful protest, but then you get a few agent provocateurs out there that start throwing Molotov cocktails at police, and guess what? You've just triggered the exact, trigger that they wanted. They wanted to get their tanks and their SWAT teams out in the streets and show their force, and it's when we get these agent provocateurs, ruining the message and dividing people and turning it into something that it was never supposed to be. Yeah, that's very real, and it works. I mean, that's why they do it. It's because it works, and it's subversive. It's going to be very hard to find, paper trails and evidence for it, because you're talking black budget, paper sack cash in a paper sack stuff. It's not like It's going to be, emails. Hey, so are we going to do that false flag today, guys? It's not,
Right, exactly. Even most of the people.
Screen share, Laurie?
Well, just a minute. Even most of the people who are involved as agent provocateurs, A, don't know they're being used, B, have been psychologically brainwashed to believe that what they're doing is for the good cause, and just like an Adam Moyer who says, oh, I wanted to help pull some people out, but screw it, man, these people are lost, it's a cult, and so on. And then Patricia Steer says on her show the other night, make sure that she uses the word cult. This is not a cult. This is not a cult. And up until a few months ago, I never even heard the word cult. And I've been in this since last February or March. So
I did.
Well, anything can be called a cult if it looks like it has an echo chamber going on in it, and everybody's, repeating the same mantra. But that never looked like that from the get-go with Flat Earth, because everybody had different theories about how the world worked once they started to look into Flat Earth, and we encouraged that. We encourage people to have their own theories and ideas, but for crying out loud, work through them and destroy any information that is not true. Don't add it in to create a hypothesis out of. Go ahead, Lawrence. What do you got?
I want to put this screen share on for what I think is another clue hidden in plain sight which is what the bad guys do. They're compelled to tell the truth, put it in plain sight, and if you don't spot it, it's your fault. And I think this is significant, and I'm going to share it. If you let me go on screen share. Am I on screen share? It's not working. Do you need to do something, Laurie?
Okay, just hold on. Push the green button.
It's not working. Hang on, I've got it now. Yeah, I've got it. Okay, coming up. Is that come up?
Yep. Okay.
Okay, well, this is from Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues introduction, the very first one he does. And he's got the AE map, but what has he got on it? He's got Pac-Men on it. Yeah, Pac-Men. He's rubbing our noses in. He knew sooner or later that we would latch on to the possibility that we've got a seamless exchange for traveling between East and West, but he's put it on the false map. And Mark Sargent was actually asked on one of his mailbag shows in the past 2 or 3 weeks, was a Pac-Man Earth possible for traveling seamlessly for East and West? And he said, yeah, it was possible. So there you have it. You know, may sound like science fiction, but who are we to judge what God is capable of for? He can do things way beyond anything we can even imagine. So there you have it. We've got Mark Sargent with his Pac-Man and his very first clue, hidden in plain sight, and the nearest map we've got, the most accurate map we've got in terms of representing reality, shown in his map makers. The sinusoid projection, also known as the Mercator equal area projection. Please go and do some research on that. Put some YouTubes out of it, and you'll find that this map is the most accurate in terms of when you start looking at flights and do they fit. So
okay,
I'll come out of that.
Kristen, do you have something to add to this while we're on Mark Sargent, so we can move on to talking about the actions of some other people?
Yeah, for people who never played Pac-Man, I hope what Lawrence said there is clear. And so I just want to say, if you've never played it, you know, or if you have played it, let's put it this way, you know that the Pac-Man goes literally off of the screen and comes back on the other side. And so that's what he means about this seamless passing. That's, you know, where it disappears and comes back again, but on the opposite side. That would have to be happening in some way, like we've been discussing for weeks, if it turns out we're not really on a circular orientation of the contents, which it appears that we're not, the more the evidence stacks up. This is a difficult thing for people to look at, yes, because it's asking them to make a leap that isn't as easy as saying the world, that the layout of the continents is like a clock face and just works very easily like that. And so there it is. But we still had to make this inquiry. I hope people really realize it was not, you know, it absolutely had to happen. We can't keep talking about an ice rim continent called Antarctica if it's not really an ice rim continent. And until we know, then why would we say it as if it's a given? Why would we say anything until we know that it's true, as though it's a given? The other thing I need to comment is, because I didn't get the chance, is quickly about the Tiger Dan clip that you played, and I'm glad that David Weiss made the video. He really well showed in slow motion how, you know, the look in Tiger Dan's eyes, and really let you hear the way he said it over and over again by the way he edited it in slow motion and repeated it. And notice that Tiger Dan says not if he ever comes out against flat Earth, or however the words go, but
when I switch.
He says when. He says when. Okay, he says when, and I'm not saying that that gives us the answer we're looking for, but it may, because it's this idea about hidden in plain sight. Plans being told to us in advance, but we miss it because it's not directly stated. So you could write off what he said as though it was just a figure of speech, a kind of way of saying it. He's not being literal. You know, what does the word when matter? You know, you could say all kinds of things, but I have to point it out anyway, because you combine that with the look in his eyes and the statement that he makes, you'll know it's that I'm being tortured. Well, if he said, if he knew back then what he was saying was to was him already being in the know that he was being used or had agreed to be used either way, then basically, you know, it's really giving us the impression, like Lori's saying, that these psyops go very deep in as far as how dark it gets with the extent that they will go for this to be achieved, their ends to be achieved, that they get to cover up the real movement for what their idea that they want you to believe it is. They're trying to hang it, just like Tiger Dan is, on not having a model. They're completely ignoring any actual proofs for the Earth being measurably flat, of course, just like all the articles that have come out lately. Same tactic. And they're hanging it on, oh, you guys all have been deceived gullibly to think that the Masons were hiding the flat Earth from you for 500 years. But it's really the Masons that are doing this psyop on you. It's just insane. It's just insane. And so I want you guys to touch on that part, because I think that's a big, people need to look at that a little more if they don't fully understand what they're trying to say there to us.
All right. I have another screen I'd like to do. Kristen, you're feeding back, I believe.
Can I just
let me mute.
About Tiger Dan, Laurie? You can look at that video that David Weiss put out two ways. You can. The first possibility is that Tiger Dan was a genuine flat earther, and he was full of enthusiasm for it. And then somebody made personal threats on him or offered him money. It could have been one of the two. And he's turned turtle, and he's step by step heading back to be a glober. Or the other alternative, he was in on it from the very start, and that was all part of the plan. And when he said, people will be torturing me if I ever become a glober again, maybe that's some fear tactic to deter people from even going anywhere near flat Earth and speaking out. Those are the two options that I see. And it remains to be seen which one it is. But there are ties in to Tiger Dan, with which you mentioned yourself, ties into Kent Hovind, because Tiger Dan was campaigning for Kent Hovind to be released from prison. And what's the first thing he talks about is the flat Earth. Obviously, Kent Hovind, if he came out as a flat earther, he would be totally destroyed, because he would lose all his speaking engagements at the universities, because they're not going to entertain a flat earther talking about evolution and creation. So there could be some time there.
I have a strong opinion about Ken Hovind, and I've watched him for years now, because I used to watch his old, he was probably one of the best debaters I ever watched, as far as fluid ability to draw from information in his head, and using no notes, just like a machine this guy was when he would be arguing, debating evolution versus creation. And obviously he was on the creation side, but he was not only a creationist, but he was a new, or what do you call it, young earth Christian, meaning roughly thereabout Earth is about 6,000 years old, and not any older, and that's when the creation happened. So I used to enjoy watching these debates, because he would just destroy whoever he was debating. And so then he went to prison for whatever reasons. I mean, I've heard so many kinds of reasons, and I was actually one of those people that was like, yeah, free Ken Hovind. And then suddenly he was supposed to go to trial, and he was released. They dropped the charges, and he was released. And I guess some people had sent him some information while he was still in jail, or maybe on house arrest, or I'm talking a little extemporaneously here, so forgive me if I step on anybody's toes. But I want to put this conspiracy out there, because I can't help but go there, that suddenly when the flat Earth starts to grow some momentum, Kent Hovind is released from jail, and one of the first things he comes out as a topic to talk about and to address is flat Earth. All these people have been sending me all this stuff, and you know, I've only looked at it, I've looked at a cursory look at it or whatever, and comes out fully against flat Earth for all of the reasons that are the antithesis of the reasons that somebody like, say, Rob Skiba uses to say that it's completely biblical. You can't believe the Bible is the, you know, inspired word of God and is true and literal unless you believe these three things: that the earth is flat, that it's stationary, and that it has a dome over the top of it. Okay, that's a whole nother topic we'll get into in a little while. But so you have somebody like Rob Skiba who says, you know, that if you believe the Bible is literal, then you have to believe this. And then Kent Hovind is saying, I believe the Bible is literal with regards to creation versus evolution, but I just can't go the flat earth thing. And so a whole bunch of people who were counting on a person the magnitude of Kent Hovind to come out as a flat earther and say, yeah, darn, you know, I did the research and sure enough, here it is. It's you know, I believe it's flat. No. Not only did he go against flat earth, but he adamantly went against flat earth, and he punked flat earth. He made fun of flat earthers as flat earth tards and whatever else. I mean, I don't know if he ever used that word, but he might as well have. So the fact that, you know, I put him as somebody that needs to be looked at as part of the Psyop, that if I were Kent Hovind and I had the opportunity to get released from jail early, if I would just do one simple thing, and that is, you know, make flat earthers look like tards, then sure enough, yeah, I'm all in. I'm out.
Yeah, and he's got this YouTube channel that is running now, Kent Hovind, and isn't it funny that in virtually every title for his YouTubes, the words flat earth appear, like he's doing it deliberately. It's amazing.
Of course he's doing it deliberately. You don't
noticed
put flat earth in your title.
I noticed that too. I was like, as a matter of fact, I was watching some old Kent Hovind stuff the other day, and I noticed that like he had a talk that was relatively recent that had flat Earth in it, and I watched almost the whole thing, and he didn't even mention it. So it's almost as if, and if he did mention it, it was like negative, derogatory. So yeah, I noticed that. I think that he's trying to draw in because he's got a lot of followers or, you know, fans or whatever, and he's trying to discredit it. And, you know, he's the one that claims to be an evangelical Bible-believing Christian, and yet he's going to cherry pick what he wants to believe, even though he says you can't do that. He's the very one that says you can't cherry pick, you know, what Bible you want to believe and what Bible you don't want to believe. You have to believe it all. And for him to say that Genesis was just some, you know, misunderstanding of stupid ancient people, then that, you know, it goes to show you that there's something up. I definitely think there's something up, and you know, I've talked to other people that agree with me on that too. That he's in this to discredit it, and sure, if it meant he got out of jail early, I'm sure he would do just about, you know, pretty much anything to a degree.
Well, because he probably looks at it as no harm, no foul. You know, it's not like I'm lying badly or anything, but you know. I'm just going to stand on that. I'm just going to stand on that until, because you know what? He could have said nothing. He could have never responded. He could have said, I'm doing research, and until I do, I'm going to remain, what is it? Rob Skiba used the word zetetic agnostic the other night. So, you know, people are listening to you guys. They're listening to us right now. So they're listening to you. And it's a big responsibility when you're putting information out there, especially if you're becoming what people are considering an expert. Once you have a lot of YouTube followers and once you have pages and websites, it's your responsibility to try to stay as close to the truth as you possibly can. It's also your responsibility not to speculate, because you're taking advantage of people who are just coming out, of people who are waking up to a lot of these conspiracies now. You're taking advantage of people who are just coming out of what is called a follower culture. They don't have their feet firmly planted on the ground yet. They're not confident about what they believe. They're a little lazy because they're used to being spoon-fed. All of the information, their education, their indoctrination, their whole lives, they're used to being spoon-fed all of the things that they know, okay? And when you think you know something, then you believe it. And so they have it a little backwards. Believing takes faith. Knowing takes, truth. And so I'm on record. I say I know the Earth is flat. I'm never going to say, unless I'm tortured, okay, that when I flip, it will be because I'm tortured.
Yeah.
You would probably say if I flip. If I ever flip, people, just like someone says, if I ever turn up dead, the stash of my information that I've been holding against so-and-so. I mean, you got to look at people like Edward Snowden and Glenn Greenwald and some of the real-time whistleblowers who their lives were destroyed for coming out and being a true whistleblower, which leads me to start talking about Math Powerland, for example. Okay, I've known Math not personally. I've never met him personally, but I've been on video with him.
Laurie, Laurie, can I just sort of butt in a little bit there, because you've mentioned Rob Skiba, and he was on Patricia's show, and he was asked on a scale to 0 to 10 how much of a flat earther he was, and he came out saying he was 7 out of 10. Yeah, he's done all this research for months and months and months, and he still can't make up his mind whether he's a flat earther, but he's 100% adamant that the Earth is covered with a dome.
Right.
I actually took a look on his page today, and somebody made a comment, and the opening words were, "Now that we know there's a dome." So he's got a huge following, and he's telling all his followers that there's a dome. Okay. Yeah, he isn't even a flat earther.
No alternative at that point than to highly suspect Rob Skiba of being a disinformation agent.
Absolutely.
Whether he knows it or not, whether he's doing it intentionally or not. Okay, this isn't about what you intend to do. This is about the responsibility of do no harm. It's the Hippocratic Oath. Okay, you don't cut off somebody's arm in order to heal their finger. And so the whole idea of saying on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a glober and 10 being a flat earther, I'm a 7. And then he said, I'm a zetetic agnostic. Those are his words. And you can go watch Patricia Steer, The Future video she put up the other day and listen to him. I'm not making it up. But then he made a video just a week or so ago that the title of it is, let me make sure because I'm sure he's got it up there. Rob Skiba.
One thing I was going to say was, in order to come out as a flat earther, you pretty much got to be damn 100%, because if you're not 100% sure on this, you're not going to go around making videos on it. You're not going to go around, trying to spread a lot of red herring arguments and some half proofs and some half truths. You're going to be 100% in it all the way, or else you're not going to be a flat earther unless you're being deceptive. And that's one of the things that sort of struck me as very telling about Tiger Dan's video, was that he said he was looking into this long before it became mainstream, and then even when he came full force as a flat earther, obviously he didn't understand all of it because he's debunking the red herring argument. So he's got disinformation agent written all over him if you just look at his actions.
All right, so here's the video. It's on Rob Skiba's channel. And it's called "If the Earth is Not Stationary, Flat, and Under a Dome, We Cannot Take the Bible Literally Anymore." Okay? It's got 8,000 views, 361 thumbs up, 19 thumbs down. It was just made on January the 18th. I personally took the man to task in my group and said, Rob, now I wasn't the only one, several other people, because he has a just saying attitude when he comes up with this stuff, because he says just saying that I have this and this and this, you know, he actually puts A-L-L-L-L-L-L-L when he talks. All of the ancient texts and all of the ancient religions come up with a dome over the earth and talk about the dome. And I'm like, no, they don't. Where are you coming up with this? They don't use the word dome, and they for damn sure don't use the word snow globe, because there was no such thing as a snow globe in the ancient days, okay? None that I've ever seen an artifact of. So, when it's just like Mark Sargent with his enclosedworld.com, with his Truman Show enclosed world, and every time Skiba said snow globe, Mark Sargent, held his little snow globe up there and went like that in front of the screen, and it's like they're in cahoots. I wish I knew where cahoots was, because I'm gonna tell you what, I would blow it right out of the water if I could ever find cahoots. But here's the deal, okay? I don't care if an individual wants to or chooses to or decides to believe in that there's a dome, a glass dome. He put the picture of a yurt up there. A yurt's not a dome. A yurt's made out of like what, animal leather or something, or fabric of some kind, okay? A yurt is a tent. But the difference between a yurt and a snow globe are like the difference between a carrot and a rutabaga. Okay, so don't tell me that you have proof and that you got that proof in Bible scripture, and that if you don't believe as I say you're supposed to believe, you don't believe the Bible is literal. You don't get away with making statements like that. More than one person jumped on this thread and said, I strongly recommend you change the title of your video because it's misleading.
Well, but
Kristen, do you have anything on that?
I'm sorry, Kristen, go ahead.
Well, let John and Kristen have a speak on this, Laurie. John, you go first, then Kristen, and then I've got a screen share I want to show you.
Yeah, because what I was going to say is in the King James Bible, you find this sort of thing a lot, where people will get behind certain ideas or get behind certain understandings from the King James Bible. But a lot of times what we find is that it's actually been it's a misnomer, it's a mistranslation, because, again, the original text was either Aramaic or Hebrew, which was translated to Greek, then to Latin, then to Old English, then to English, and you've got just so many different ways that things can get lost in translation. And one big example is the firmament. And I've said this before, we've talked about this before, but so many people got mad at me for saying that the firmament is a misnomer, it's a mistranslation. They'll say, oh, well, you can't change the Bible, it says so right there in the Bible that you can't change the Bible. But the thing is that the original word firmament in the original language was just simply RAQ, or rock, or rakia, and all that means is expanse. And so people took the idea of expanse and translated that through the ages to firmament. And now if you don't believe the mistranslation, then you're somehow going against the Bible. And it's just, and I agree with you, Laurie, you can't prove things out of the Bible, because if the Bible says something, that doesn't prove anything. What proves something is what we can experience and, demonstrate and measure here in reality. Now, if you get some sort of deeper affirmation through the Bible, which there's definitely something to be had there, that's different. But to call personal affirmation or personal, credence, for lack of a better word, to the Bible, that's something's totally separate from proof. And I think there is a distinction, that we really need to be careful to make that distinction.
Kristen?
Okay, I made many comments to Rob and tried to clarify with him why would he have a problem with the firmament being flat, and I've also made other comments about what evidence do we have for sure about a firmament at all, other than an indication that we might not be able to travel past a certain altitude. I don't know that we have anything fully more conclusive. I brought up to him that some researchers are starting to look at Project Fishbowl as possibly not true, and he had a huge problem with that. I was not the only person that brought up to him the idea, Canopy. The other commenter just brought it up as sort of something she'd been thinking about from her own research. I brought it up to him as my understanding. Because of how much research I've done, it's an actual theory among biblical scholars, and just never really became super popular. It seems like because they were trying to apply it to the heliocentric model, although I'm not certain that that's the whole reason it didn't become popular. But in any case, I just asked him what his thoughts were about this, and he just kind of managed to really not give me much of a response to most of what I said, and to my final comments where I really got more to the heart of the matter, he just didn't respond and decided to leave, I guess, the thread, or not participate in the thread at all anymore, leave the group, whatever.
Well,
and that's.
I want to make sure I go on record there that you said that he was not removed from the group. He left of his own volition, and he's been in the group for 8 or 9 months. Was added by a friend. I believe it was Ashley Webster when she was an admin in the group, and he never commented hardly ever. He never responded hardly ever when people would tag him in a comment or post one of his videos and tag his name in it. But until recently, he started making posts about the dome. And every time Kristen argued with him or asked him questions or made response, he totally ignored her. He called me smarmy and controlling and, all kinds of other names. But he left the group on his own. He was not removed. So later on, when you hear that he got kicked out or whatever, I can prove that he didn't get kicked out. Okay. I want to read something just for a second to sort of break this up just a little bit, because this is somebody who posted a comment under the link that I shared about this show tonight, and the title of the show. It's called Flat Earth Watergate. Is there a Psyop brewing? Okay, and completely blew me out of the water that she wrote this on her own, and I'm not going to say her name. She can claim it later if she wants to, but it has a whole bunch of likes under it in the group. And it says, I suspect a lot of big names are Psyop. Not all of them, although I have no idea who is who, so I don't spend too much time working through the lineup. I would feel terrible calling someone out if they were truly genuine, as it's hard enough being a truth seeker as it is without having one truther calling you out, again, only if you're genuine. Besides, I was never a fan of daytime soap operas. I have recently seen 2 main names who I am tempted to assume is actually several figures dressed up or disguised as several different personalities in such a way that unless you're looking for it, you may not realize. Some people might call me paranoid for thinking anyone could possibly be acting as another, but take a look around in this movement. Their lies are being called out. They are already desperate. Once they come out and say, ha ha ha, we were just kidding, then you will look at them and it will be obvious and you will second guess your reality again. I won't name who I suspect because, again, if I'm wrong, I would be doing the movement an injustice. They will chant, the earth isn't flat, got you, you idiot. I am already expecting that scenario. I can't help but think many agents will come out together and say it was just a big experiment to prove we are, in fact, gullible tinfoil hat freaks. Some flat earthers will likely be so shocked they will lose all faith in the movement, and it will make history as the biggest con ever to fool the masses. As a bonus for them, in the history books down the track, if anyone thinks outside the box, away from the indoctrined lies of the elite and their New World Order plan, they can say, now, children, remember what happened years ago? Folks were fooled so easily into believing the earth was flat. Don't be like those fools. The truth is, the earth is indeed flat, and the people who are trying to hide this, Satan as their leader, will stop at nothing to have you believe otherwise. They will likely try to make an example of us to the rest of the world to prevent this from ever happening again to future generations.
Can I do a screen share now, Laurie?
Sure.
Okay, just give me a second. Okay, can you all see that?
Yep.
You got it? Truth Frequency Radio. February the 23rd last year, Truth Frequency Radio has been taken over, or it's come under the umbrella of the GCN Radio Network. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with that network, it's the Alex Jones Network. Now, you know Alex Jones is pure disinfo, and you only need to start looking at which flat earthers are broadcasting on Truth Frequency Radio. You know who they are. It's disinfo. As far as I'm concerned, Truth Frequency Radio, anything that they spew out, it's disinfo. What do you think?
Well, I don't know about anything they spew out as disinfo, because
I've been on there a bunch of times.
I told you, you might even be surprised yourself on some of the things that come out and are said on this show, Jonathan. But anyway, one of the ways, the most important way to do counterintelligence as a true bona fide counterintelligence agent would know, and that is try to use as much truth as you possibly can and only insert the gatekeeper version that you want of what it's supposed to mean. And that's what political pundits do all the time on the news shows. They'll try to tell you what's true, and then they'll tell you what you're supposed to think about it, okay? And that's what punditry is all about. So some of these people are nothing any different than the news people that you see on TV. They're political pundits. They're, social pundits. Their job is to give you as much truth as they don't care that gets let out, but then to take you down a path with that truth that you would probably be most likely to want to take anyway. So say, for example, someone who is one of these kinds of disinformation agents, a lot of times they don't even know that they're being used. And they're given a certain amount of insider information to make them look really intelligent and really in the know, and oh, breaking. How many times do you hear that all the time? And these are this whole alternative news segment was created for the purpose of disinformation and gatekeeping. And one of the reasons why I am so familiar with it is because I've been a conspiracy theorist truther for quite some time. And when I go looking for information, I've now been trained. I had to untrain myself. But when you're an alternative news junkie, you get trained to go to certain sources that you know are going to tell you the truth. And you don't want to go to the regular news because those are all liars. And so they have you convinced that through a form of mind control that that you're getting the real news. And each one of these gatekeepers is designed to pick up a certain amount of people that fall through the net. You know, they have a big fishing net for dissidents, for people who think outside the box or start to wake up for whatever reason, and they turn their back on the conventional indoctrination propaganda programs, and they start looking for the truth. And then what happens is that they have all of these people that are hanging around underneath that fishing net, okay? And the fishing net's got bigger and to smaller holes in it. And the big guys are the ones that are at the top of the fishing net, and they are the gatekeepers for each hole in the net that you fall through. And as you fall through a hole, let's say you're a vegan, and you're against animals being mistreated, and you have a big soft heart. You're going to fall through over here, and you're going to end up probably in the natural news segment of stuff. And then, or maybe you're a patriot and you really want, let's take this country back. Let's put these people in jail, and you're going to fall through the Alex Jones crack. Or what if you are a little bit sci-fi-ish and you have a little bit open mind? You're going to fall over here through the David Icke hole in the net. And so as people wake up, they fall through one of these holes, and it takes a while digging around in all these rabbit holes to work your way back out. And I did, and I know lots of others have too. So that's how the truth mixed in with a little bit of lies is utilized to control the a little bit easier to control people.
Now, you say Truth Frequency Radio is owned by the same company that owns Alex Jones, or it's owned by Alex Jones?
No, it's the same company that manages Alex Jones's show. So
Oh,
they're an umbrella company.
Okay. Yeah.
And
And
it's
that company is owned by the
that-
Disney Corporation.
Are they? Well, yeah. All the media outlets are owned by the same one of 5 companies, and Disney's one of them. The
And
thing
all
is,
of the alternative ones are owned by one of those 6 too, and that's what's even more interesting, isn't it?
right. But what I was going to say is, though, there's several shows on Truth Frequency Radio that are going flat Earth now, though. So that's a good
Right
thing.
into their psyop that they're going to try to implode later on.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if it's getting the word out to more people, that's good. But if there's misinformation getting mixed in with it, then that's bad. But
Well, when you have somebody like Mark Sargent and Rob Skiba and all of those guys sitting on that panel, when the question comes up, well, what about the maps? And Patricia says, Rob, what do you got? And Rob's like, and then well, what, Jesse, and they go on down the line, and of course she never even says Mark Sargent, and when she does later on have to mention him, he's like, he doesn't want, you can just tell he doesn't want to go there and he doesn't want to touch it. He's too busy holding up his frisbee and his snow globe. And so at the end of the day, what came out of that is I basically, in a generalized way, got the feeling, and I cannot be the only one, that there, we're like in M. Night Shyamalan's movie called The Village. It's like, those we don't speak of, the monsters in the woods that are going to get you. If you say their name, they're going to come and sneak into the village and they're going to get you and kill you. Okay. Those we don't speak of is the fact that there is not a consensus of what the flat Earth map represents and what the flat Earth model can be built off of. Because if the circle doesn't work with the continents splatted out all over them the way they have it, then the model doesn't work. And if the model doesn't work, then we can't plop a dome over it, can we? Okay.
Well, I don't see why it has to be a perfect circle either, because, again, one of the things that I've been sort of looking into is, the latitude and longitude lines are all, they're just imaginary lines that are based on observations of the sun. And so if we assume that the sun's going in a perfect circle, then everything's going to map out a certain way. But let's just say that instead of a perfect circle, it's going in sort of an oblong sort of trajectory. We can't tell, because here on the ground we can only see so far in either direction, and it's going to look, it would look virtually the same. You're only looking at a small portion of that arc of its orbit, for lack of a better word. And then, again, if you change another variable, like having the 90-degree north latitude being sort of a ring instead of a single point, then that's going to make things a little bit more flexible. And depending on the orientation, if it is an oval, depending on the orientation of where is due north in terms of the center, maybe it's off center, and then in terms of the continents maybe being rotated in certain ways. But at the end of the day, the southern latitude distances at the 45 degrees south is 22,000 miles, going around from the south tip of South America to the south tip of Africa to Australia, and then back around to the south tip of South America. It's 22,000 miles, nautical miles, at a mean latitude of 45.
It's not, John. It's not, mate. I'm sorry. You're completely wrong there. I've checked out the aviation routes that actually cover those actual points, and it's more like 18,000 miles. You're taking information that's coming from Robotham, and if you read his book, there's so much speculation about third-hand reports from sailors sailing in the 1700s. That's not reliable information. And don't forget, these are sailors. I've been on a sailing ship. I've been on a Royal Navy ship for a week. and I've done sailing, and ships don't sail in a straight direction. It depends which way the wind's blowing. They have to tack. So the ships are zigzagging across the ocean. So their distance figures are going to be well skewed by the fact that they can't sail in a straight line.
Well, that's what I totally.
If we're talking about Robotham, then we also have to talk about all of the flat Earth leaders who have used Robotham's purely, totally, almost repeated Robotham's work.
Well, first
be
of all,
Dubé. That would be.
He was taking Mercator chart information, and he was also taking the accounts of actual South Sea voyages where they map that stuff out. But you're right. See, if you're sailing nautically, using a compass and using the sun and the stars, if we're in a flat Earth hypothesis here. Due west is a curve, and that's why that's why we say that the shortest distance between 2 points nautically is a great arc. And so I could definitely see with modern navigational tools, not having to go the long way around west, being able to sort of cut corners. But to say that his distances were wrong because of GPS or whatever, I'm not sure what that is, but no, he was going by accurate sources of information. When people weren't bound by the Antarctic Treaty. This was pre-Antarctic Treaty, and it's it seems like I have no reason to doubt those numbers.
There, John. I've got the flights. I'll send the stuff to your Facebook page tomorrow, and I'll show you the flights, and you'll see that it's 18,000 miles. There's perfect symmetry. This is an opportune point, look, Laurie. I'm going to just put a screen share and prove something to John.
The point
shows that the circular map.
My point is, though, if it is 18,000 miles, that's because they're cutting corners. They're not going along the due west path, which would naturally be a longer arc around. That's what I'm saying. Nautical sailing is different than, and that's that. But the point is, though, that's where we get our latitude and longitude lines is through those arcs. It's the path. It's the observable path of the sun. And so, if you're navigating with a geopositioning system as opposed to manual navigation, sure, you can cut off some of those corners. So I don't doubt those numbers. But again, we're talking about the lines of latitude.
Yeah, but they're going all the way. Okay, these flights are going all the way around the Earth, John. They're covering from one side to the other, and it ain't 20-odd thousand miles. It's about 18,000 miles. Let me do a screen share, Laurie.
All right.
Here we go. Okay, has that one come up?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, let me just bring it down a little bit. Okay, these places are on the same respective latitudes, north and south. And we've got Rio Galles and Swansea. Yeah, one's 51 degrees north and one's 51 degrees south. In their respective summers, their day and night times, their longest days and their longest nights are identical. Well, about 5 seconds out. You can go and check. You check where you live and check in the corresponding latitude south of you, you will find that they, 6 months down the road, their times are identical to yours. There is perfect symmetry on the Earth, going all the way up to the poles and all the places in between. And you cannot possibly have that on a sun that is going around in a circle.
Also, this is one of those proofs that the ball Earth people use against us to say, how can this be true? And they've got access to the same information that we do. How can the day, 6 months apart, in the same latitude, reversed north and south, be the same length? That proves a ball.
That's right, John. So if the latitude, if the rings on the brown map got wider and wider and wider, there's no way you're going to get the same sun patterns in each half of the Earth. They're going to be totally different, but they're exactly the same. There is perfect symmetry on the Earth. Go and do some research on it. You go and check respective latitudes. You can go down as far as about 55, north and south. And the poles, you can check the webcams when one's in total darkness, the other's in total light. And while we're on the webcams, yeah, I've got a bone to pick with Jeranism. So if you just give me a moment, I'm going to bring this up.
Well, one thing I would say, too, is it appears that the sunlight is traveling with the meridional lines like there seems to be like these magnetic flux lines that allow the light to, you know, propagate a little bit more efficiently going in north to south directions. And so that doesn't surprise me that you'd have that sort of bilateral symmetry. But you actually don't when it comes to things like barometric pressure. You don't have bilateral symmetry in that regard in both hemispheres. And so to me, light is sort of a tricky thing for us humans because you know, we tend to think that it just goes in straight lines, but indeed it does bend around different sorts of, you know, magnetic fields and even ionized plasma. And if that ionized plasma is running north to south along the meridian lines, I can totally understand how light would naturally, because all light is radio frequency waves. It's just visible spectrum waves.
John, do you see this
but
map?
John, you don't need any of that on the Earth model that I've got. You don't need special effects for it to work. On the model I've got,
well, it's not special.
What we've got.
It's not special effects. It's just how light behaves naturally. There's nothing.
Yeah, without any special.
Hold on, everybody.
You talk about on the model that I have. Yeah, you don't need it. You're going to get the day and night distribution because it's a symmetrical Earth in terms of the patterns of the sun. Now, let me bring this other screen share up, Laurie, because this is important.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of people putting out this information about Antarctica and they're not telling the truth or they're misguided.
Get out of your other screen share, please, because your screen is just black right now.
Okay. Okay, let me come out of that one. Hang on. Is that gone? Right, this next one.
No, you're still black.
Let me try it. Let me try this one.
All right.
Have you got that one?
Okay.
Is it up? Yeah. Casey Station. Can you see that? Can you see it, John?
Yeah, I can see it.
Casey Station. Right. Time stamped. This Casey Station didn't open up just in time for the flat Earth. It's probably been there 15 years or so. The webcam has at least. And I've been watching that for weeks. So I waited, you know, when the sun was regularly out, and I've took screenshots of the sun so you can see the direction of the sun because it's shining. On this one, it's over the vehicle. So the sun there on the screen itself is going to the east. That's the first screen, yeah? I've got screenshots going in every direction. So I'll bring a few more up. Just bear with me. Shadows 2. Let's see if we can get that one up. Has that one come up? The next one? Do we have the next one?
No.
No? Okay, I'll go back to screen share and bring that one up. Here we go. Google Hangouts.
It's awesome when it works, but
I'm going to come out of that one. All right, let's go. Change that one. Screen share. Here we go. The next one. God, it's a pain in the arse, this. What the hell's going on here?
you're gonna have to get out and completely get out of it and start over to where we get your icon back, your face back, and then start again. Okay. In the meantime.
All right, well, basically, I've got photographs here that show the sun casting shadows in every which direction. Now, that's impossible, even with a circling sun, because if the Antarctic is on the outside, it's only going to get one sweep a day. The sun can't be going round it, which tells me that there are two suns in that area. One's creating the shadows for one half, and the other's creating it for the other.
Get out of screen share, please, Lawrence.
I'm trying.
Okay. Kristen, in the meantime, we haven't heard from you enough, and so we'd like for you to jump in here. And I want to get back. We can only spend so much time on the maps and the model and all that stuff, even though we all should be talking about it all the time so that we can get this thing figured out. But it's simply the fact that if you don't talk about it, it doesn't make it go away. And if you act like it doesn't exist and your model that you brought into the flat Earth or that you had when you came into the flat Earth, because that's what everybody was sharing, then we're not going to get anywhere. And I'm not opposed to the azimuthal equidistant map or the circle or anything else, just because it's capable of having a dome plopped over it. Rob Skiba said that to me the other day when in this conversation, that you know, you just don't like it because you don't like a dome. That's absolutely not true. It has nothing to do with the dome. A dome can be plopped over a circle, a square, a star, a trapezoid. A dome can go over anything. So one has absolutely nothing to do with the other. Go, Kristen.
Well, yeah, a lot of Rob's comments are very presumptuous. He assumes in his own world it absolutely has to be a dome. Oh, hopefully that feedback clears up a bit. Let's see. Usually it resolves. It might be that I'm overheating, so I might have to just shut it down and come back in 10 minutes or something. Does it sound normal to you? Because I'm feeding back on myself.
Okay, it's a little distracting in the background, but it's not that big a deal. Just if you can ignore it, then ignore it.
Okay, so yeah, the Rob Skiba comments, since you brought it back to him a little bit, in his world, it's got to be an enclosure, and this dome is the only shape in his mind that can be an enclosure that meets the ground over this circle. And I don't know. There were so many things we did, but I did point out to him, and it was just kind of this thing of he's acting like he's the only one that's applying logic, and he's acting like he's the only one that's done real research. And where this whole thing really went awry, that led to the dome, is people. I have to say this. This is what I wanted to say earlier. People bringing the whole conversation of the first place is where this really originates. I have to point this out because even Mark Sargent, in his first couple interviews, was saying that he was looking for the firmament when he was doing his research. And that led him to the conclusion that it's a dome. After he found the evidence that he believes indicates that they found what he calls the upper and outer edges, which I feel is still super conjecture territory at this point, because I don't see that was clear by.
Well, Kristen, tell us what he said in the video, the future of Flat Earth future video the other night, where when asked about, you know, approaching the dome, where's the end of the dome, or something about approaching the dome, he went into that explanation about a gamer type dome, and that it literally moved away from you when you approached it, like if you were in a video game. You remember that?
Yeah, actually, and that's a concept he's touched on in a number of interviews. Really, just I've always been rooting for Mark and everybody to be a real person. I'm not a shill believing person. I didn't come into this movement even knowing about shills at all. This is all news to me, and I'm still rooting for each one of these people to be absolutely what they say they are. So on the record there, really, I just, but we've all, I guess, like Lori has talked about, and like I've come to understand in my own way over the months before I ever spoke to Lori, is that some element of this obviously was shaping up to be transparent as some sort of, infiltration going on. And so an insertion, this dome thing really took over. We've talked about it before, but it starts with even this concept of firmament becoming part of the conversation, where we get off track because if we can't prove it, we're going to get lumped in as a cult or as religious because of the firmament being a specifically biblical concept in people's minds, right? Now, and even though that, as John pointed out, may not be the original thing at all, if it really goes back to just Rakia, and that was just an expanse. And I'm coming from that perspective too. As I said earlier, we don't know for sure. There's a solid barrier. And I understand that when we talk about the firmament, we're talking about the sky. So when people talk about the stars being in the firmament, a lot of people assume that means they have to be attached to the firmament, which would mean that the firmament has to move to allow the stars to move. And no. That's really a leap that people make when they make these kind of assumptions, when if the sky layers, the expanse of the sky, is all part of what we call the firmament. And I have seen several definitions of the firmament that say it's the sky. that includes all these layers. That can include the celestial body layers. I can see in certain time-lapse footage, I think it's when they're up in the mountains and the visibility is great and they're closer to the stars, you can see a kind of a plasma layer holding, or that the stars are contained within, and you're seeing the moon and the stars move roughly in sync, and it's just amazing, you know. But this, you don't always see the plasma layer. I've only seen it in some time-lapse footage. That's all going to depend on distance and visibility, right, on a given day, clarity-wise. So we have to just consider all these things. The map, maybe, and touching on what John said a few minutes back, maybe we can't from the ground be sure ever about the path of the sun. So we're going to have to rely on as many other points of data and evidence gathering as need be to come to some conclusion. I find it interesting, though, that they, in the panel the other night, just absolutely hedged any conversation while they brought up the maps a little bit and were pretty vague about that, while they could agree.
Remember what happened? They didn't bring up the maps at all. It was
Patricia
Pat brought up the maps.
And right. And so, to the extent they discussed the maps, to be more general about that, it was not in depth, but they did not. They addressed that. Okay, they were meant to address that this has been a hot topic of conversation lately, and it's where obviously this would seem to have led Tiger Dan to go off the deep end, for whatever reasons this is happening. And so they did not address, though, that the conversation has been as much around the circling sun conveniently. Okay, and I just have to point out that I've enjoyed many of David Weiss's videos. I've enjoyed a lot of points of his contribution, and the video he put out about quantum locking many months back really helped me to further feel comfortable with what I already felt comfortable or intuitively accepted. The electromagnetism was what we were dealing with. That's before I even found out about the electric flat Earth hypothesis. And so I really appreciated that video. And as I said, other things as well. But so
is it possible that David has just put his wagon to, you know, a camp, especially with Mark Sargent, because he completely just like high-fived everything Mark Sargent's done in the panel discussion the other night. You know.
Well, let me touch on a couple more points. What I wanted to say of David Weiss, and to what you said too, leading to that, his recent video about the circling sun showed two examples of actual, you know, photographic footage, video footage, time lapse, neither of which showed us an example of a circling path of the sun. It didn't even show the apparent arcing that we often see in either of those examples. One of the examples showed an absolutely straight path from the viewer to the vanishing point. The other one showed a completely straight perspective line, diagonal line of a setting sun. So neither one showed anything to indicate in any stretch of the imagination a circling path of the sun, but that was the whole topic of the video.
That was that punditry I was talking about earlier, where here's what you're supposed to think.
Yeah, and when Jeranism put that rebuttal to Tiger Dan, am I on now? Jeranism puts that rebuttal out to Tiger Dan, and he starts covering Antarctica, and he goes through all the webcams that he says he's looked at, including Casey. If Jeranism had looked at Casey, he would see that the sun is casting shadows in every direction. If I can do it, he can do it. But Jeranism is using that one false video where it's deliberately been doctored to make it appear that there isn't shadows in every direction when there are. And the reality is that it needs to be two suns that can do it, because a single sun circling the Earth coming down to as far down as Capricorn is not going to create shadows in every direction in Antarctica. And this problem needs to be addressed. And we can't have people covering it up and saying it's something else, because it isn't. The shadows go in every direction. These webcams have been there, 10, 15 years. They're time-stamped. You see people coming out of the buildings, getting in vehicles, driving away, clouds coming over, winds blowing. If you want to try and say that all these people are actors and they've been there for the past 15 years, you've got to be out of your head. These are real, genuine webcams. And the sun is casting a shadow, or the suns, they are casting a shadow in every direction.
Well, and see, that's where these people like to lead you right into their dome, because, oh, well, it's because there's really only one sun, because the Bible only talks about one sun, so it must be reflecting off the dome. And that is what's creating, the illusion of more than one sun or the properties of more than one sun. So,
Yeah, but he was
you
denying, Jeranism was denying the shadows.
Lawrence,
It was denying that there were shadows in every direction. And he says he looks at these webcams.
Okay. You done?
I saw that video, and I think what he was showing was that the webcam footage that he found, they erased about 6 hours out of every day for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was always from the time from like 6 p.m. to midnight or something like that.
That's done deliberately to throw as a red herring argument.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at Casey. As long as the sun's shining, you're going to see shadows in every direction. In their summer.
Well, I don't think that I don't think that Jeranism doctored it and brought it as a red herring argument.
Oh, no,
He found something interesting and he showed it.
Yeah, no, but that one is the only one there is, John, and that's been done deliberately to throw it in as a red herring.
Well, have you guys seen the southern 24-hour sun where it looks really, really fake?
Yes.
Yeah, that looks so fake. And so to me, I think that there's definitely something up. Now, if they can get 24 hours of daylight in the south, in the summer south, I don't know if you guys saw that Drew 7777 basically animation where he used date and time information as well as real observations of the sun, and it sort of goes to show that the sunlight is passing through different layers up in our atmosphere, and it's actually bending in great distances, especially around the outside in the southern summer. So, I can totally see 24 hours of sun in the south with that in mind. But the reason that they had to fake the sun, like the time lapse of the sun going around, is because you're not going to see it like that in the south. It's going to be something totally different. So I think they're faking stuff in the south, but I don't think that Jaron pointing that out.
Or they're faking it because the map that we showed you earlier, sinusoidal projection, is a more likely version of how Antarctica works, and there's no way it can be going around in a circle, and there's no way they could be following it going up and down like it showed in a couple of the videos that I've seen.
It shouldn't go at an equal speed.
Of what people say, that they need to be cognizant about what they say. Okay, I say things all the time and just off the cuff, and then if someone calls me out on it, I'll go, well, I don't know, I'm not really sure about that after all, but it sounded right when I said it. Okay, these are the kinds of things that people who are at the top of the heap in the flat Earth community, who have people following them. Now, I'm not a follower. You're not a follower. Probably none of us here are follower types. We've never followed anybody in our lives, probably. Okay? We're more probably leader types. Okay? That doesn't make us better. It only makes us all different. Okay? But David Weiss said on that video, let's see, let me make sure I read it right. Maybe planes, talking about how it works in the southern hemisphere, being wider on the circle, and how it's possible for the time date thing of the latitude north and south that Lawrence was talking about earlier. And his response was, well, maybe planes are going faster than the speed of sound. Now, how do you say something like that? The faster than the speed of sound would do what? What does it do when something goes by you faster than the speed of sound?
It makes
a really loud boom.
Those planes would have to go at the speed of Concorde to cover that if it was really that far.
Stay on this path around Capricorn to make its circuit around the Earth, to make a 24-hour day, going faster than the sun in the northern hemisphere would have to be doing, because it's taking a larger circuit. It's the only way you can get the same amount of sunlight on a wider path. Okay, it's like a record. The arm goes tight around the center, and it goes way over here around the outside of the record. Okay, faster than the speed of sound. Now, if somebody's not a real good researcher and they go out and repeat that to somebody when someone says, well, you know, well, how does the sun work in the southern hemisphere? Or how does the sun work on a flat earth? And this person says, well, David Weiss said that it might be actually traveling faster than the speed of sound in the southern hemisphere so that it can make the same circuit in a day. Do you understand how that's bad? That's bad. You don't do that. You don't make statements like that that people will repeat. Just like you don't say dome, 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 and you don't say snow globe, snow globe, snow globe, if you don't know there is one, okay? And you can say, I speculate. If that's too much for you to say, to put that out there, it's my opinion, or it's my speculation, or from my viewpoint. If you can't say those words before you blast out some theory that's completely unproven or has zero evidence to back it up and or even begin a hypothesis out of it, then what are you doing? What is your intention there? To be a hero? To be a hotshot? Be able to say something sounds, you know, smarter than everybody else? Or is it because you're trying to create disinfo? That's up for the people out there to decide. I'm just putting it out there. That's what this whole thing is about today. Don't put things out there. Because when I came into the flat earth movement, the AE math was on the table. Here it is. This is what you go around and show and sell it to everybody, is this little map and these, oh, look at my perspective in P-Brain, and all these different people made these models based on that AE map. And
Right,
then you come to find out that the facts don't measure up.
The thing is, though, is by showing that the AE map isn't exactly accurate, people think that that debunks the flat Earth, but it doesn't, because if that were the case, showing that the Mercator projection isn't accurate in terms of a representation of the face of the Earth, then by the very same logic, the Mercator projection debunks the globe Earth. You know what I mean? So,
well, if people are too afraid and too, you know, namby-pamby and walking on eggshells to go and do the research and to keep questioning and not settle on anything until all the questions are all the dots are going to make a picture of the way our Earth is. Just like if Lawrence can take the time to the map he showed with the measurements, he found a map that fits the measurements. Everybody else, Tiger Dan had a meltdown because the measurements didn't fit the map. Okay. Now, whether or not that's true, that's the part that's questionable. Did he have a meltdown because the measurements don't fit the map and he couldn't come up with a map, and then therefore the model fell apart and therefore flat Earth falls apart? If that's where people are trying to take this, then that's where the Psyop is.
He never went there, you see, Laurie, because when he put those map videos out, I posted a comment on the comments section saying, Tiger Dan, you promised that you would look at the square map, and he never did. And I wonder why that is. He never went there. He wouldn't look at it.
Well, where about, just for the purpose of me knowing, so I can go look for myself, because you know me, I'm going to verify even what you say, Lawrence, because love you to death, but you know, if you get something wrong,
you go and check it out. You go and check it out. I want you to check it out.
On the Flat Earth Clues map, where you found that, I'm going to have to get used to this sinusoidal projection.
You can call it the Mercator equal area projection, which shows the continents at their correct size.
Okay. All right. Let's show that again for the purpose of this conversation.
Have you got it?
That's not it. It's not.
Have I got it?
No, I've got it. Sinusoidal. Here we are. All right. So let's talk about this. If this is something you've happened upon, several things come to mind when I look at it. Okay. First of all, there is no Arctic Circle on it. Okay. Greenland goes up in there, and then it just sort of stops. Where the Arctic Circle would be, part of Greenland is within the Arctic Circle. Okay. So we can already see that sort of a little bit heavier white line is probably closer to where the Arctic Circle is than the pointy point on the top of that map. The second thing that I noticed is that Antarctica has a much closer size and shape to the ice blob they show us from the bottom of a globe from the Google Maps and all that kind of stuff. Okay. The next thing that I notice is that it does appear that the sizes of the continents is a little bit closer to what they say is more real than, like, for example, Australia. It's Australia, I've been told multiple things, that it's 3,000 miles across, that it's 5,000 miles across, and it roughly looks to be about the same size as the United States. And so when I look at this, the only part about it that seems unimaginable is the fact that you cannot circumnavigate it without becoming a Pac-Man and going off the side. And the second thing that I notice is that it would be impossible to polar circumnavigate it. And polar circumnavigation is where you sail around the globe from starting at, the top, the Arctic, coming around the bottom, and coming back up the other side, back to the Arctic. That's a polar circumnavigation. So,
well, we don't know that, do we? Because nobody's ever tried it.
Well,
nobody's ever tried it.
But you go plotting all the flights on there,
First time seeing it.
and the routes make sense.
I was asking Kristen. Kristen what she thought about it. Is this the first time she's seen it, or seen it, regarding a possibility as a map? Okay, so
I think it's really hanging, so I'm probably going to drag because you're dragging. So, am I dragging?
No,
not
you're
right
okay.
now.
You're okay, Kristen.
Okay, great. I think this is my first time seeing it, but I felt like I'd seen it before, and I guess we all saw it if we watched the clues, and I know I've watched the clues more than once. I usually have probably listened to it, but I definitely watched it at least twice. And this, I see how you could go north and to wrap around north and south if you're forced to maybe stay to one side of Antarctica, but then that may not show the true Antarctica either, because there might be all kinds of waterways where you could somehow go through the landmass in effect. We don't know that. I mean, and there's now some evidence maybe coming out or articles about that. Who knows what that's all about? What's with the sudden surge of information about Antarctica? But the other thing to point out is that on the other version of this map that Lawrence showed briefly today, it had actually a much larger landmass for Antarctica. So it is possible that this map is still not completely perfect, completely accurate in all ways. Let's bear that in mind.
How about this version of it, which is from when?
1570.
Lawrence?
1570, that's from.
Well, what about circumnavigation, though?
Well, nobody's allowed to try it, so we wouldn't know.
Well, we're talking about not polar circumnavigation. We're talking about
East-west.
East-west
Right, yeah.
circumnavigation.
So how does that work on that previous map and then on this map?
Show the cruise, Laurie. Show the cruise route I put on that map.
Okay, let's see where that one went to. Hold on just a minute.
This is P&O Cruises. It starts off in Southampton, travels east, and when it gets past Australia, New Zealand, it comes back on the other side of the map and heads up to the west coast of America. It is going east-west, and there is a seamless transition from east to west.
All right, now let's see if I
must be possible.
share this. Hold on. Stop sharing. Share this. Here's the cruise one. Share. How's that?
That's it. Yeah.
All right.
So I've plotted roughly where the cruise goes. Yeah. So it starts off in Southampton, and it works its way across. It goes up round the Mediterranean. I think it goes through the Suez Canal, and then it goes around those islands at the top of Australia, and then it comes out and heads north towards the west coast of America, comes down there past places like Los Angeles and California. Then it goes, is that the Panama Canal, it cuts through there, it stops off an island somewhere in the Atlantic, and then it heads back to Southampton. Now, anybody out there who's got any money, you can prove this is true. All you've got to do is book yourself on a cruise and do the last leg of the cruise from Australia, on the bit that goes from Australia to the west coast of America. Have your compass ready and get on the ship. And if that is going east, if it was on a circular map, you'd be doglegging round all the way. So if it mirrors what's on there, it's an east-west passage on a seamless east-west map.
Well, so you see, this is one of the reasons why, when people say, well, what about this person or that person being a shill or being an agent? And of course, everyone's been attacked. Eric Dubay, he attacked me for being a shill and put me on his shill wall of fame. And so I started looking into him, like, why does this guy even have any concern about me at all? Because I'm like nobody. This was way back early last year. And so when I started looking into his stuff, that's when I started seeing the repeats of the Robotham material. That's when I started hearing the speculations of, and Kristen can testify to this, about the moon is transparent, the moon is flat, and the moon is transparent. And I heard him talk about the ice wall, and I heard all the way around. And he states these things as fact. I've heard his videos enough times back in the day where, he sounds like to me that he's reading off of note cards, because I don't know anybody that can hold this much information in their head and even remember what their telephone number is at the same time. So maybe he can, I don't know. But when I started listening, really listening, because this was early on when I was pretty enamored with anyone who could rip off a whole bunch of information like that. And then I started questioning, wait a minute, what about this ice wall? Is that just to say that the water doesn't run off the sides? Because that was the answer when people say, where's the edge? His answer was, this is all surrounded by an ice wall. Well, nobody's been there, nobody can prove that, and so nobody knows. But he states it as fact, or he states it as, that thing I say all the time about if you act really confident about something, then people are more likely to believe you. Then, Math Powerland comes along and says, we got to go to Antarctica. It's all about Antarctica and having an expedition and trying to traverse Antarctica. Okay, I heard that a bunch of times. And then it became this, this dome thing started coming in by those who believed that the AE map was there. And then it became an argument, pitted people against each other. You're either a domer or you're an infinite planar. I'm like, wait a minute, why do you have to be either one of those? I don't like having to choose from either one of those options. And because I'm not a domer, I don't believe in a dome, and I don't believe in an infinite plane until we have some kind of, real expedition explorers going there and writing it all down and showing us video and all of that. And if they run into that wall that Mark Sargent's talking about and it starts moving away from him, I want to see that on video. If he goes up and somebody goes up and tries to knock on the wall, I want to see it move away like in a game show. But when you start to put these things under a microscope and you finally get to the point where you're not lazy anymore because you're not just automatically going to take these experts' word for it, then you start watching Mark Sargent's clues, and boy, are they great. I mean, they look so great. Until you actually, months later, hear that somebody does get on a flight and take this flight from A to B and B to C. And then that long haul thing starts looking really suspect, and some of the other clues. And then you start to ask yourself, well, why haven't any of these guys done any thing about curvature except to A, repeat what Robotham says, or B, talk about the Bedford level experiment. That's about the only thing I ever hear about with regards to curvature there, or that the fact that you get in a plane and no matter how high you go, the horizon line is always at eye level. And that if you were on a ball, it would fall away from you. Well, that shows in the videos that NASA makes. As you get up there in the space station, there's the curve of the Earth down there, but it's actually at eye level to where they're looking out the little portal hole. Okay, it's at eye level, and so some of this stuff is true and verifiable. And then other things start to fall apart when you question them. If you don't question everything, then you don't know which ones of these are which. And I didn't even question the AE map because I was lazy and believed that everyone who's come before me has questioned it. So now that we're questioning it, now we're bad guys because you're rocking the boat and you're ripping away our model and our map, and it's what Flat Earth is all about. No, it's not. Flat Earth isn't all about models and maps. Flat Earth is about the fact that there's no curvature and nothing's spinning. That's what it's about. And no one seems to talk about that anymore because it's just too Flat Earth 101 for everybody for some reason.
Yeah, can I just interject here because I think you've edged on to Math Powland. Laurie, you've edged on to Math Powland and his infinite plane. Math Powland is a Walter Mitty. He makes stuff up. He invents stories. When he was on our show 2 or 3 episodes ago, he came up with a story about a university professor in Tasmania and his students challenging him over flat Earth. That story was totally fabricated. And then he came up with a further addition to it that a US warship and an oil tanker was positioned off the coast of Tasmania in case the students started a riot. The whole thing was a pile of lies. I checked every last source on that. That is a completely fabricated story. And when he was on last time and we asked him about NASA, never once has he given any evidence that he worked for NASA. The least he could do is produce a paycheck or a bank statement saying, this is evidence that I work for, because if I did it, I'd be proving to people that I work for NASA. He's never done it. And the other big giveaway with math, and you know about this, Laurie, and I'm sure you're going to tell us about it in a minute, that thing that was put out by Polarization Nation, the Boston bombing knees, when Matt said somebody had attacked him. And there he was with makeup all over his face. He wasn't injured at all. It was a bit of makeup, and his jeans were all ripped as though he'd fallen over, but he forgot to put any cuts and bruises on his knees. He's a frigging liar.
Well, I know that you guys have butted heads, and I'm not going to get in the middle of that. And the only
Laurie,
thing that I have said, the only thing that I've said about that is the possibility that those jeans were ripped knee jeans because I wear them myself, and that it had nothing to do with him getting his pants ripped, and therefore his knees weren't bloody. But I'm not here to make excuses for anyone. He put that stuff out there. The people need to hold him accountable for what he puts out there, okay? If you don't put anything out there, then no one can challenge it. But if you do put it out there, then people are certainly going to challenge it. And especially if you call yourself the leader of Flat Earth, or the creator of this version of the Flat Earth uprising, revolution, whatever. More than enough people have heard him in his videos to say that, it's my movement. He's used those words. So that makes you a wannabe leader, and if you do that, then you put a target on your back. So
yeah, John asked him about NASA though, didn't he? And John, yes, you asked him about NASA. What did he do? I asked him about his 33 T-shirt and other hand signs and all kinds of things. And if anybody wants to go back and watch it, I don't remember the episode. It's either 9 or 10. I believe it's 9. They can easily listen to the answers themselves. It's one of the reasons why
video is out there. You can go back and you can listen to it with a fresh set of ears, and you can determine for yourself if you think that this person is an insider. And what if this person all of a sudden became not a flat earther anymore? What if he threw everybody under the bus, this guy that created the movement, this guy who orchestrated this movement for this generation? If he all of a sudden decides that he's not going to be a flat earther anymore, and does a Tiger Dan from now on, obviously Tiger Dan is going to be the moniker for anybody who flips off a flat Earth and jumps off the roof. And so if he becomes a Tiger, if he Tiger Dans us, then everything he has said and everything he has done within the movement is going to be made fun of, and is going to be debunked and everything else. So that all of a sudden means there wasn't any NASA insider after all. And when you look at all the other whistleblower insiders who've come along, and you know, people like Snowden and Glenn Greenwald, and what's the one that was in the military that talked about the drone strikes and all the people that died in Afghanistan? Oh boy, he changed his name, became a woman. Come on, anybody? Okay, never mind. You know who I'm talking about at home, maybe.
The Olympic athlete. Jenner.
Oh, you're talking about Caitlyn Jenner?
No. I'm talking about the military guy who gave up all the information, became a whistleblower about not Abu Dhabi. The drone strikes that they killed all those people in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't.
The footage. That guy. All right. So sorry to get off topic. The point is that well-known whistleblowers have their entire lives altered at the turn of a dime. Okay, and their life is never the same again. Now, Matthew has said he's been targeted. He says he's been chased. He says he's been, attacked and problems and everything, other kind of thing. Okay, I'm not even going to say that hasn't happened. But if you're going to put stuff out there, then you're going to have to stand behind it, or you're going to have to stand down on it. And if he turns around and said, if he or anybody else, what if Mark Sargent, all of a sudden, Mr. Clues himself, who has single-handedly brought, thousands of people into the Flat Earth movement, if he turns and says, I made it all up, it was just all a gamer ploy in my head. People have to be ready for this, and that's what this show is about. That's what this warning is about. Now, there's going to be people out there who go, who are you to warn? What's your story? Why would I be warning about an internal Psyop if I'm an internal Psyop? Okay.
Yeah,
if you want to put that all the way back around and go, well, if you were really an internal Psyop, then you would warn everybody about that you're an internal Psyop. Okay. So interestingly enough, though, I started a Facebook group, a website, and have been doing these shows for weeks now with Lawrence, with other people. And this is not the first time that we've talked about people's actions. We're not here to talk about people. We don't care. We're not gossip mongers, and this is not a soap opera. This is serious business. We're not just here for week to week for another continuing episode in the the saga of the Flat Earth fakes. But Kristen knows, I know, any of us knows that if you could only see what happens behind the scenes, once you get to a certain level of knowing people, and you start really paying attention, and you're not just a cursory Flat Earth follower, then you know what we're talking about. All right. So this is for later. This video right now is to be used later when these things, if they start happening, or maybe it will prevent it. God help us. I hope it does. If it prevents some psyop from happening where 2 or 3 or 4 big name flat earthers, Patricia Steer can act like she's not a big name flat earther, but you don't go and get a couple of minute fancy intro video made that costs money, because I know she didn't make it. If she did, I want to see her work, okay? Because she doesn't even know the difference between bandwidth and bitwidth or whatever, you know. I mean, she admitted that at the beginning, and I don't think she learned that much about it. She's being propped up. That's my opinion. I've watched her now for months. I'm not being propped up by anybody. I don't have a bunch of, you know, fancy gadgets and stuff. And it isn't even about whether you can afford it or not. And I'm not even going to go there. Where I'm going is, if you're going to be a flat earther, be one. If you're going to have people following you and hanging on your every word, then don't say things like, well, you know, if it got proved to be a globe tomorrow, well, I'd say I'm sorry and move on to something else. Stuff like that just makes me grind my teeth together. So that's why we're here today, okay? That's why we're throwing ourselves under the bus, because I already know what's going to happen. Now I'm going to have people, oh, I'm leaving this group and I'm leaving this, you know, I'm leaving you behind, because all you ever do is talk about people, okay? And you talk about everybody else.
No, it's been the whole thing's been set up to fail, because nearly all of the big names in flat Earth.
Oh boy, you just froze. That was crazy.
And now they're pulling all the strings.
Wait, Lauren, like, you just froze. I mean, you just froze. So start your sentence over again. That was weird.
Yeah, flat Earth's been set up to fail, because when all these people came in last year, yeah, they're all singing to the same hymn sheet, apart from there's some who are domers and some are not, but they're all sticking to the circular Earth with a circular sun, which don't work, have proven it doesn't work. And they're, apart from some are going to be domers and some are going to be infinite planers, but the strings are being pulled now to show all the holes in their evidence. And all these big names, they're all going to fall to the wayside, because they're a laughing stock. And if they had to go and present their evidence to mainstream, they would be ripped apart. If I can do it, then mainstream can do it. And Matt Powerland, you know, you've seen those videos, Laurie. You've seen them, Kristen. They've put them out there. People haven't found them yet, but there's 2 videos of Matt Powerland, gay videos. They've been put out there to blow up Matt Powerland. People will find them sooner or later. I haven't posted them anywhere, but obviously you've seen them and I've seen them.
Wait, what? Say what?
He's a really good actor.
Say what?
Have you not seen them?
I don't even know. I didn't understand what. Did you say that there's gay videos?
Here's what Lawrence is talking about, and this is not gossip. This is real. Okay. We're not talking about people. We're talking about what people have done. All right. So Matt has, back in the day, made a movie that was like, he was a gay character, a gay male predator type character who, you know, in the movie, he kisses men, he lays in bed with men. There's no porn to it. Nothing I saw had anything to do with nakedness, and I didn't even watch that much of it, because I already knew Matt was an actor. I already knew that he had made quite a few movies and was spent quite a few years in Hollywood. And, you know, Jesse Spots is a comedian, and then that's not even his real last name. He's on Facebook as Montel Lazenby. He's on YouTube as Jesse Spots. But that's not even his last name. I don't even know. I've lost track now. It's somebody like Moorfield or Moorland, or I don't even know what it is. But the point is just because someone's an actor doesn't mean that, you know, they can't be president. Like
right.
Was,
and
right?
You know, a lot of people have dreams to go move to Hollywood and go be an actor, and it's a very, very competitive, cutthroat business, and it's also a very corrupt, and there's a lot of money involved. And you know, I've known people that were successful in Hollywood that actually just had to get out of it and move to like North Carolina just to, you know, sort of retire
But
early because it's such a
here's
sick
the difference,
environment.
Jonathan.
Well,
Here's the difference.
and if I
He
could
was
finish,
believable, okay?
yeah,
He
if
was
I could
very
fit,
believable.
right, and if I could finish though, however, and you know, I've never been one to go after stardom. That's, you know, I'll leave that for the birds. But if I was put in a situation where I had to start making out with dudes, I'd walk off the set. I wouldn't do it just because, you know, no matter how much you paid me. Well, you know, if we're talking $20 million or something, but I don't think he got paid that much.
No, I don't think so either. The point that I was trying to make, the point that Lawrence was trying to make, is we've all had lives before Flat Earth. We're all going to have lives after Flat Earth. And some of us have an intention to be a rock star in Flat Earth, and some of us don't, okay? And I think most of the people can know the difference between those who want to and are trying to and those who really don't give a rat's butt. But what Lawrence was trying to say is there's a difference between pretending to be a whistleblower, which is what is possible that Matthew did in his show, because that whole NASA whistleblower thing started out as a comedy act, and he was apparently very good at it, and people liked it, thought it was funny. I mean, and so some people will say, well, you know, maybe you can actually be a whistleblower, but then put it out in a format that looks like it's comedy, but it's really true. Okay, that's how screwed up the world has become. I don't know what's true or what's a psyop or what's fake or whatever. Kristen, you have something to add to that?
Well, a couple things. I need to talk about the Mark Sargent for a moment and Matthew Powerland with regard to their understanding of Earth curvature. I just have to, because it has to. This is something people can check out on their own, but unless they're going to take these videos down before you can go look. After I say this, whatever. Okay. There's a video from Matthew up from almost 4 years ago. I hope you can hear me. You're dragging. The screen's dragging. So.
No, you just talk. We hear you fine.
Great. Okay, that's weird. It's just one-sided maybe, but anyway. He is talking about, he's drunk in that video. He's clearly, well, I assume drunk, and he's holding a beer, so whatever, he seems drunk, and he's meaning as opposed to on other drugs. That's what I'm saying. He's at least drunk. Something's up there. He's not straight, not sober. So he's talking about curvature. It's several minutes in, he gets to that, and his whole thing about not that we wouldn't see it if we did live on a ball, that we wouldn't see it from the ground. Okay, and when I met with him once in person recently, because coincidentally he happened to be having to come to a town that's my hometown that he happens to already be working with his t-shirt printer in, and so it only made sense that we had this easy opportunity to meet because I was 10 minutes away, and so we met, and he was supposed to just, I don't know, talk to me. I thought about normal things, but it went just into him talking about his whole long story and all the things that have happened to him, and just it ended up like a 4-hour thing. But in the middle of that was a conversation he brought up about, we started talking about curvature. I forget exactly how it came up, but I tried, and I said to him, I take it you don't believe what you believed in that video from years ago, right? Because I've heard you say in your recent work, like this crazy notion about how we don't see Earth curvature. So obviously you don't believe that anymore, right? Because I was going to say to him, maybe you want to take that video down. I mean, that video has 19,000 views and mostly thumbs up, and it's in capital letters, the title, something about the curvature brainwash, I think is roughly the title. And literally, he just responded to somebody's comment when I went and looked at it again recently, just the other day. I mean, he's still commenting actively. People are still commenting. He's responding. Okay, and so this video, a lot of people are still seeing it, is what I'm getting at. And he's putting out there this, and I've spoken to him just recently when I met him, and he still believes this. He still believes that we wouldn't be able to see the curvature from the ground. And then he contradicts himself, too. I want you to notice if you watch this, if you get to watch it, he goes back and forth. It actually doesn't even make sense, but the upshot is he's trying to tell you wouldn't see it if it was there. Now, the other thing about Matthew is I said to him, because I was trying to figure out, is he a real person once and for all, trying to make my own inquiry into, is Matthew Powerland a real person or not? I was happy to help him out, get his t-shirt printed for a cost point that he could then sell it for a normal cost point so that people would buy it, because obviously I could tell it wasn't selling. And so I didn't offer to print it for him. It's just I have knowledge about how to get shirts printed, and I could make sure that he got it done for the correct price. I used to do t-shirts for 8 years in my business. Okay. And so he's just ended up not pursuing that with me, even though I could have had him printing them a different way more than a month ago now. But it just hasn't lined up that he could really have that conversation with me, and he can say whatever he wants. And of course I'll be attacked, I'm sure, for mentioning him. He was already expecting I'm going to attack him because I had to unfriend him, because he's already come after me saying I've been taken in by Lawrence about this the Mercator map, and that's completely untrue. I came to this on my own, and Lawrence invited anybody that wanted to talk about maps onto the show. I've said that part before, but for people that don't watch every episode, trying to give you kind of the basic overview. And the thing about Matthew is I said to him, and as I prefaced, I'm trying to figure out, is this guy, for a real person or not? I mean, he never would let me speak. He just always talks over me. And so
obviously he's a real person. Obviously he's a real person. What you're saying, is he a caricature? Is he playing a character role?
Right.
Real human.
Well,
okay.
Obviously, yeah, I'm no, I'm not saying he might be a clone or anything. Artificial intelligence or whatever.
Well, you just don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so how?
So I mean, real just in
what Sargent says about curvature, because you're saying Matthew said
real. Yeah, I'm getting there. Real as far as, is he who he says he is? I say to Matthew, well, Matthew, you did bring the infinite plane into the conversation about the flat Earth, because I was going to lead to that's been one of the more obviously divisive, because you spoke about this. Like, when I finally get a chance to talk, I'm sorry, I have to try to cover as much as I can. Okay, when that, we all know that became a divisive thing. People it brings them right back to the concept of infinite space, and they don't like it. They don't want to go back to that when they've already started to feel cozy that there's no space, so and we've talked about that as well. I started entertaining, I wanted to at least make the full inquiry into the infinite plane myself, but I was never sold on it. And so by the time I finally met Matthew, I was kind of over making as much of a concerted inquiry into the infinite plane, but I'm still open to the idea of extended land, because, the more I looked into it, the more it became more clear that there might be a case to be made for extended land, but we, going as far as infinite is maybe jumping the gun. At the same time, I see the point of where if the Earth plane itself does not suddenly become the universe itself, we've got to answer what's outside of it, what contains it, all of that. So it's not that easy to just write off the concept of infinite just because people find it uncomfortable. So I've tried to make that point as well. So I'm still open. The thing with Matthew, when I say to him, okay, you did bring the infinite plane thing into the conversation, he said to me, no, I didn't. And I was just like, I was speechless. Okay, I'm going, wait a minute. Well, I mean, what could I say to him? What do you mean? What do you didn't? You didn't? And I didn't want to become confrontational. I mean, he was already, just really worked up, talking about all the stress and all the things he's found out over years and years. And I mean, and he wouldn't. And then when I started to challenge him about the curvature thing, just wouldn't let me interject at all. I ended up going home that night and creating a demonstration that shows that we would show curvature in both directions. Plus, I've already discussed at length the scale that science tells us. People need to remember this or know this. 3.1 miles from a 6-foot-high vantage point off the ground. The Earth curvature, they say, creates the horizon where it rounds away from our vantage point at 6 feet off the ground. This is why boats are said to disappear. We now know that isn't true. When we zoom in, they're still there all the way to sitting on top of the surface of the water the way that we see them normally before they begin to appear to disappear. Now, Sargent, his issue with curvature is on his last show with the last show of the year. I don't know if he's done another episode since. I don't follow every episode of Strange World. I lost track of that along the way. It's too much to keep up with. And Jonathan, who's made a very compelling contribution, has done, I think, his own Flat Earth videos, from what I understand, on his own channel, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if that's really him. Truth is Stranger Than Fiction, some really good videos. Now, they bring up toward the end of the interview, this is their last interview with Jeffrey Group. And Jeffrey Group was talking about his most recent research about now he sees the Earth as embowed in the concave direction like a dinner plate. On this same episode, they bring up how that Jonathan brought to Mark's attention that when you look at, he referenced, by 3D models, that we wouldn't see the Earth curvature until we get above 30,000 feet. And so that we were, they're indicating we really don't have anything there as far as like, because we don't have enough footage of above that point. And I'm going, what are they talking about? What do you mean? Where is this coming from?
And I thought it had
Where is this coming from?
more to do with the horizon raising up with your eye all the way up to 30,000 and 40,000 feet. That's a big proof, because you should have to look, markedly down as you gain in altitude to see the horizon.
Well, okay, so it's already well known that Sargent hasn't done a curvature clue, and that should be one that I guess we would expect that he would have done if he was going to do a clue about everything. But again, and I reiterate, and people can decide to unsub from this channel, or they can decide to blast us in the comments afterward. I'm not concerned about that. I'm really not. What I'm concerned about is that this movement had a real good momentum going, and this time, 6 months ago, it was the hottest thing going, and people were posting about it on their pages and their blogs and every other kind of thing with excitement. And somehow between then and now, a lot of the excitement has gone away. Only a certain amount of people have become the well-knowns, no matter what kind of work anyone else is doing, no matter what kind of proofs people are doing. But then what happened, and it's the possibility that questioning the maps and questioning the model has put the brakes on the excitement a little bit. If that's the case, that's too bad, because it should have had a reverse effect. It should have had an effect that well, we still have work to do, and we need to do the homework. We need to verify things. We need to cross-reference things, just like Lawrence has done, just like some of the others of us have done. We've taken the time to do comparative science and look at what is real and what is happening. And for people just to blow it off and say, well, that's a government website that's giving us this data. Well, that's absolutely true. Time and date is probably being supplied by some N starting name like Noah, NASA, nobody, whatever. But in reality, if I can go on it and I can look at the time and date that is in my own city where I live and see that it's correct. I mean, I know what time the sun's going to come up, and I know what time the sun's going to go down. And if it's correct, and it's correct in Santiago, and it's correct in Nook, and it's correct in Peoria, then it's correct. So then you have to take the data and you have to match it to the map. And if it doesn't work, to the model, and I'm not saying perfectly, because nothing's going to be perfect at this point, but if it doesn't even come close, or you have to make adjustments, well, maybe it speeds up to the speed of sound, get mad at me if you want, David, but if you're going to say something like that, laugh after, if you don't really mean it as you really believe it. Because people don't know that you're kidding or not, And maybe you weren't kidding. I don't know, because
Well,
I
I
had
It
think,
seemed like he was offering it as a possibility.
yeah, that's what it was. He was just offering that as a possibility, but I don't even think supersonic planes are necessary. And again, that's because you know,
No,
aircraft are
we're
not
talking
going
about
to.
the sun. We're talking about the speed of the sun that he said it about, not about planes. Not about planes going. I've watched videos of planes flying over someplace at this and breaking the sound barrier, and the windows blow out. Okay, I've seen that personally on stuff. So here's the bottom line. Okay, we got 8 minutes to wrap this up, and we can do this again. And if people want to watch, they can watch. If they don't, and they don't need us to tell them that you know, these possibilities of psyops and whatever else exist. And by the way, one of my friends on Facebook said it's Bradley Manning / Chelsea Manning. That was the person I was talking about that was the whistleblower for the military. So, you know, if you don't need this kind of thing, if this isn't your shtick, then don't watch. No problem. But we're going to talk about a whole lot of other things that do have to do with serious flat earth stuff. If you don't believe, nobody said here we're naming shills. I don't know who, I don't know if anyone said the shill word during this show. We're not naming shills. We're putting forth evidence.
I did. I did.
Okay, then Jonathan did. We're putting forth evidence and dots that should be connected to show that there's a strong possibility that there is an internal psyop that could happen at any time. If that would happen, to where the major players in this, if they were gone, their information was gone, their videos were gone, taken down, poof, gone, and they disowned flat earth and maybe even flipped to the point of making fun of it and doing debunking stuff like Tiger Dan has done, are you prepared with your own pursuits to continue flat earth? Are you prepared to pick up where they left off? And are you prepared for flat earth to crumble from inside and blow up like the Twin Towers did? Or are you prepared to carry it forward and say those people don't represent what I believe about flat earth? And you know, if it never happens, that would be awesome. But the fact that it's already happened once or twice, I can name some other people that imploded, like Joseph Clymera / Townley, among others. Star Gods is pretty much at the point where he just says, you know, I'm over all of this and I don't want any part of it anymore, and I'm even going to stop making videos. And then he comes back and says, you know, made a video about Mark Sargent and the panel that happened on Patricia's show. Nobody's calling anybody a shill, but we have to recognize that there is disinformation being handed out there, both by Dubé, Sargent, probably Powerland, unless he's willing to come forward and show some proof that he actually is a NASA whistleblower. These are the three main names that kicked this whole thing off. From that point on, what happened? A whole bunch of other people started making videos and making proofs and talking and having shows. So we've got a few minutes. Let's wrap this up. I would like for you know, Jonathan, since you hadn't had a lot of time to hear about this or talk about this, because this wasn't insider, it was just something that the rest of us talk about, and you can admit that I don't talk to you during the week, right? You know, you can say
Well,
that.
I wish we talked more during the week.
Well, good. I wish we would too.
Yeah, I mean, and you got my number and everything, but you know, in terms of like Tiger Dan, yeah, I'm gonna come out and say with 99% certainty, or at least I believe that he is a turncoat, he's a shill. The stuff that he's debunking is stuff, you know, that's really sort of like red herring arguments. He's not debunking any of the really good proofs. He's also displaying that, you know, to me anyway, that he never really understood some of these proofs to begin with. either he was following herd mentality and he was following, Bible logic, and then, something changed his mind and he still doesn't understand the proofs and he's debunking himself. That just shows that he's not a good researcher. It shows that he didn't really understand it. But then to come out and boldface lie on me and make false accusations and tell people that I'm going to turn their information over to the Homeland Security and sell their information because I'm a beggar, and beggars are going to sell your information, just outright slanderous lies, things that I would never ever do. Somebody like that. Oh, and by the way, let's not forget the the sodomy, or the virtual sodomy, between him and Cognitive Dissonance, whose channel has allegedly been taken down. So these guys are all sort of in this thing together. They'll say that they're not, but they are. So yeah, there's definitely psyops going on, and the sad thing is it's just so simple. But what's going to happen is right now, because 2016, I foresee this thing getting to critical mass. But if it gets to critical mass in such a state that it's spiraling out of control, you've got big names that are all arguing against one another. You've got people debunking themselves with red herring arguments. You've got people such as Stephen Christopher and Cognitive Dissonance saying, oh, well, I used to be a flat earther, but then I realized how stupid it is. Your average person is going to listen to all these different conflicting things, and they're going to conclude that flat earth is another stupid conspiracy theory that's been debunked. But unfortunately, the truth is, and I agree, this shouldn't be a leader movement. This is a grassroots thing. This is the truth. This is our world. It's just so simple. There's so many good evidences that Tiger Dan and Cognitive Dissonance won't even touch. Though if you try to speak these truths, they will literally scream over you and then say that you haven't proven anything. That's how they operate. And so, we need to be careful of that. Now, we can speculate all day long about who's being subversive or who's going to be the next Tiger Dan, but again, let's not go prejudging people. Let's judge, let's gauge people by the fruit of their labors. If David Weiss pulls a Tiger Dan, then I'll come and say the same thing. But up to this point, I think Dave Weiss has done a lot of good things. He's brought a lot of people over. Has he done everything 100% perfectly? No. I mean, we're human. I haven't done everything 100% perfectly. But at the end of the day, I think we should all try to stick together. And I'm not saying, yeah, we're going to all be singing Kumbaya around the fire or anything. But at the same time, we're flat earthers. Now, if anyone's going to start discrediting us with misinformation or half information or whatever, then we're going to call them out as we see it. We're going to call a spade a spade. And if people don't like that, I'm sorry. This is the only way that we're going to be able to filter out the weeds out of this movement. And it's pretty obvious. But if it goes unspoken and if it goes uncalled out, then lots and lots of more people are going to be tricked. So at the end of the day, I try to remain neutral as much as possible. I would like to be able to get along with every single flat earther and globe earther out there, but we do need to have some sort of solidity. If we're going to theorize and hypothesize, we need to make the right caveats, and if we make a mistake, we have to have the integrity to make a correction. But at the end of the day, as long as we sort of stick to that, stick to the scientific method, stick to the facts, and yes, Cognitive Dissonance, if I'm going to debate you about flat Earth, I can indeed debunk the globe model, the heliocentric model first, if you're listening. So all you have is your ignorance, and that's all I got to say about that.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate your winging it the way you did. And Kristen, do you have any last words? We're real tight, but jump in there and do 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's hard to do a 30-second thing to know what to say as a final comment. I hope people stay open-minded, that we're not many people are going to come after us now for this and try to paint us as the problem. Just expect it. We know that this is what we're up against. We already know coming on here that everything we say will be scrutinized, just like they need to know that everything they say will be scrutinized. And when you have thousands of followers and you're telling them there's a dome every week as though it's a given, then yes, I'm going to point that out as a problem, because it is. It's done a lot of damage. I've pointed this out already. The media has responded to what they saw happening in this movement. They did not, as I tried to point out to Rob Skiba, pull a rabbit out of their hat with this concept of a domed disc and ignoring any real evidence, and to just make the mainstream pass us off as it's a passing fad of crazy people, and just leave it at that, and let's laugh about it and go on to the next thing. And so if they couldn't see what was at stake here, I have a hard time understanding that. So like I said in the beginning, if these people are real, if they're who they say they are, why are they doing the same damage as though they are shills, when I am not wanting to believe they are? And if they really aren't, why would they not understand what's at stake? This is not about an enclosure. It's not about something we can't prove. It's about what we can prove. And that's the only conversation that we were ever going to have a leg to stand on if we expected to be taken seriously. And that's what I mean about what was at stake. We're all adults here. If they're as smart as they purport to be, and they both seem very smart, I don't see how they didn't get it. So yes, I'm calling them out as kind of a tag team from the beginning of pulling this firmament has to be dome, because they did it. Are they going to sit there and deny that they did that? Are they going to have a hangout and say that what I'm saying wasn't true or isn't true? Come on, come on. I've watched the whole time.
Yeah.
We all have. So thank you for letting me join in. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you for your time and for doing it. And I'm sorry that the pressure. I have to mute your mic for a second because it was feeding back. I'm sorry if the pressure is it comes back to haunt you or Morgile or Lawrence. I'm perfectly ready for it, and or I wouldn't have agreed to do this. But I have to go back to that thing about the movie The Village. I mean, if it becomes those we can't speak of, to be unable to question any of the top names, because then you're damaging flat Earth, then I'm not interested in being a part of that. That's not what I'm interested in. So Lawrence, you have a couple closing words?
Yeah, well, as I see it, this was all planned. We have a rotten barrel of apples, with the vast majority of the main headline flat earthers being those rotten apples. I think they're writing their exit scripts at the moment, so we're looking to, we'll end up with a much smaller flat earth community, unless the viewers and the armchair flat earthers get off their arses, start doing some research for themselves, and start challenging and verifying that what they've been told and what they believe to be correct is true. It is going to be, it's going to be small time flat earth. So it's in the melting pot. It's down to the people, who are the armchair viewers, the millions maybe at the moment, who just watch the unfolding drama but don't get involved themselves. That's the problem. We need more people, because there's not enough people out there looking at this stuff and saying, well, is that right? Go back to the source data. Rowbotham talks a lot of good stuff, but a lot of what he's saying is just pure speculation, and it's stuff from old records, third hand, and some of it just ain't true.
Well, my closing statement is that, Mark Sargent constantly, every opportunity he gets, says that we live in a Truman Show enclosed world. Well, he might. And if flat Earth becomes a Truman Show enclosed Earth, because he put that out there, and because all of the people, if you remember ever watching the Truman Show, everyone was watching the Truman full time, all the time. The camera was always running, and they were watching him and living his life vicariously as a reality TV show. And one of the things that this starting to look like is it's starting to kind of look like the Truman Show, is that all of these people are watching what and listening and repeating what these top people say. So these top people have a responsibility to say the right things. And if you don't know something, you don't have to make something up just to fill it in. You don't have to make up a theory just so you can say breaking, breaking, breaking. And you know, if there is a way to work together, and I still believe at the end of the day that if we were all alone on a desert island and this was all, we needed each other to survive, that we actually could work together. But there's only one way that that's going to happen, and that's if everyone that is at the top of the food chain agrees to do the right thing and say the right things and be the leader that they've become, because the people have put them there. The people have put them on a pedestal, and they're looking up to them on that pedestal, and they're expecting great things. And so and they're not expecting them to lie to them. So that's my admonition, if there is such a thing, and I'll try to do the same thing, and I always have. I mean, I really always have. So my apologies, and everyone here, I speak for everyone here, our apology if we've hurt anyone's feelings or stepped on anyone's toes, and I expect a rebuttal if you have one. So, Jonathan, you had something quick?
Yeah, just one final point. It's important not to let our egos get in the way of the truth. And so, like, if you are, you know, sort of an expert on this and you have people asking you questions, a lot of times people, you know, want to bolster their ego and start making up theory to explain things they don't understand. It's a lot better just to say, you know, I don't know. Let's research it. Let's, you know, maybe you're an expert on it. Maybe you can help us figure it out, because we need everybody on this. This is, you know, we have to unlearn 500 years of science and come up with rational experiments and explanations for everything. It's like I get people ask me, well, what about comets? You know, my answer is they really don't make sense in a heliocentric model where it's gone for 75 years and comes back, you know, right where it should be. But it makes a lot of sense in a stationary model. But do we have an explanation for comets? No. But, you know, just don't go making something up. That's my point. You know, don't let our egos get in the way of it. We don't have to know everything. And some things we know, some things we're not intended to know. We can only see a small sliver of the radioactive spectrum, you know, radio frequency spectrum. So we're sort of poor observers, and we're not intended to know every little detail.
No, and this isn't one of those fill-in-the-blank online, you know, forms you have to fill out to where you can't tab to the next line until you fill in the one that you're working on now, or it won't take it, because that's not how Flat Earth works. You know, if I put my first name in and I skip my second name or my phone number and I can't finish it because I haven't filled in all the blanks, you don't have to make something up just to fill in the blanks. And you know, if what we're doing here isn't helping someone, then we'll stop doing it. But I can guarantee you that the messages that we get and the comments that we get from people saying, good show, good information, you know, you brought up things we hadn't thought about. If what we're doing is wrong, then our numbers will go down and it will show. And I see other people's numbers going down because they're not saying anything new, and they're not giving any proofs to what they even say. So,
if I could say something else real quick too, and yeah, sometimes you have to go back to the same proofs, because if you get a newbie to this and you don't prove everything, then they're going to have 10 arguments and stop watching. But one thing I did want to tell you is that Patricia Steer's trailer or intro video was done for free. It looks professional, but I've been told that it was done for free, using a couple of different people that donated their time for the music and for the you know, editing and stuff. And so just going on record with that, that's what I was told.
Okay, good. It still reminded me of Josie and the Pussycats. I hope that doesn't bother her, but you know, I remember that. It was the first thing I thought of when I heard the music and everything. So. But I still want to say that, in my opinion, this is a serious issue, and it is. I don't have any intention of doing anything entertaining, and we're going to continue on the same format that we've been doing because it's been working, and we're helping people to understand aspects of the flat Earth, And so this panel has worked out to be very well. We will still continue to have guests and expand the panel from time to time, but this has been the format since we started, and we have added Kristen since we started, and I thank her for giving her time and her expertise and her kind of scientific mind and logical mind to round out this panel. So thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Lawrence, and thank you, Jonathan. Thank you those for watching. And I hope that if you have constructive criticism about what we talked about today, that you'll put it in the comments. And if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all, which is what my grandmother always used to say. And your retards those comments will all be removed because they don't actually add anything to the story. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the USA. And bye for now, everybody.
Peace out, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Folks.
Take care.
Bye.